Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of the Murder Part. Tonight we'll be looking at the case of Liz Golyar. I'm here today with my co-hosts Jeff and Mike. We'll go through some introductions quickly, starting with Jeff. How you doing, Jeff?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Jeff Pincin. I am a licensed mental health counselor in Pennsylvania and Delaware, and I specialize in OCD treatment and other obsessive compulsive disorders. And happy to be here talking about Shanna Liz Golyar.
Very, very good. So you're a mental health counselor. What career would you have chosen if you had not become a counselor?
What I was really on track for, was to be an email and text message scheduler. Right? So let's just imagine I'd have, a dozen, 24, maybe even 100 phones sitting there just ready to send the message, right? So I'm scheduling it. It's all worked out. There's a big spreadsheet. It's all great. Same thing with email, 100 computers just sitting there ready to go, right? So then smartphones come out and computers get smarter.
That just killed the business model.
Right. I mean, apps started coming out. Email got better. And then I was just stuck. I was like, well, this isn't viable anymore, so I guess I might as well become a counselor.
Yeah, imagine having on some of those computers text messaging programs, because they weren't apps at that point, right? There were programs you could actually type it out, because before that, you had to use the T9.
Right. Oh yeah.
It would have been terrible for texting.
Yeah, but I was there. I mean, I was forefront of the business.
On the bleeding edge, and then Apple stole it from you.
Right.
Just stole
exactly,
it from you.
Exactly. So, it was going to be big business, really. People were just they needed that.
That's a tough break.
Thanks. Yeah, it was stolen out from under me.
Yeah. Well, at least you had counseling as a backup position, right?
Yeah. It's all right, I guess.
Yeah, it's something. It puts food on the table for a while. All right, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Tell us about yourself.
My name is Mike Smith. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in mental health, working in private practice in Delaware. I'm a self-styled expert in all things geek. My areas of expertise in mental health are in narrative therapy and geek therapy, and soon I will be a certified therapeutic game master.
Very good, very good. So if you didn't have a career as a counselor, what were your career aspirations?
See, when I was in high school, I really liked my computer programming class. So I really wanted to become a forensic, computer analyst. It would have been great, digging through computer stuff and trying to find clues as to stuff. But I have terrible ADHD, and sifting through thousands of lines of computer code is just a nightmare for me. There was just no way. It just wasn't going to happen. So unfortunately, I had to fall back on counseling.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, like so many
it's
end
tough.
up in counseling when your dreams are shattered.
Yeah.
You could have really helped out with investigations and stuff.
I could have, right?
Could have been.
Computers were, becoming much, much bigger when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And then, smartphones, I still would have been able to have work through the smartphone thing. That would
true.
be even more work.
That's true. Yeah. No. Yeah, my dreams were shattered, but yours could have still happened.
Could have still happened if it hadn't been for ADHD. It's a
Awful.
shame.
Sorry to hear about the counseling, Mike.
I got to settle for being a counselor.
Yeah. Road of shattered dreams. So we see some shattered dreams in this case. This takes place in Omaha, Nebraska. So I want to get through the name thing, right? Because like so many cases, you have the name of the people and then what they call themselves. I don't know if this is common in general, but it's certainly common in the world of true crime.
AKA is
Yeah.
also known as. It's used all the time.
The other day I was working on a case where one of the suspects actually had a completely different name. So it wasn't like the middle name in quotes. It was like a whole different first name and last name. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. It's just
Christopher Chichester or Chichester, or Clark Rockefeller.
Were they trying to cover something up, like with Gerhard Strader?
I don't know. It was what was the name? It was the vampire cult case. This guy Rod Farrell, who committed double homicide in Florida, and his girlfriend at the time, her name was Charity Kessie, but she also had a completely different name. I don't remember, but just a whole different name.
Well, they actually were role playing. This is something I know a lot about, right? Mm-hmm. They were actually playing a game called Vampire the Masquerade.
That's
and
right.
So they had their character names and then their own personal names. They were their given names, and then they created the characters or personas to play out in the game. They use those names as well.
Yeah, it's interesting though, is on the legal documents, like on the court documents, like it became, I mean, that's what she's known as now. She's still, I think she's out of prison now. I think she got out in, I want to say 2006. But yeah, an interesting case with a lot of the role playing. There was the Masquerade, there was also some other games, and yeah, they really got deep into some fantasy there. But
We should totally cover that case sometime.
yeah, that was really
a fascinating case.
a surprisingly complex case.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like a pretty straightforward, young kid goes off the rails with fantasy, commits a crime, but it had like a cult, sort of. They called it, a clan.
A
But
very cult-like atmosphere that was created by Farrell. It was,
yeah, and his criminality, his history of criminality was just, it was shocking. It was shocking. So, but in this case, we have Liz Golyar, but she also has another name, which I think is pronounced Shanna. Mm-hmm. Shanna.
I've heard it pronounced this. And then again, we're going to murder the pronunciation.
That's the first victim.
Yeah, first victim in every crime is on the murder part is pronunciation. Shana or Shanna, and it's pronounced like either Golyar or Goyer. Like I've heard it pronounced Goyer. Mm-hmm. I think the only one we know that we can pronounce correctly is Liz
Or Elizabeth, full middle name Elizabeth.
Yeah, but she just went by Liz.
Right. But that's where she gets it.
Yeah. So sometimes to try to figure out pronunciation, I'll go to different videos on social media and I'll play, like the news, and I'll play just the part where they say the name. I'll go another one, do the same thing, and try to get some consensus. With this one, there is no consensus.
Nope.
No, everybody says it different.
It's like, so
I think it's easier to stick to Liz.
it always makes me feel better with those reporters because they butcher names every day. Like they're not even close sometimes. I'm like, okay, if they're doing it, then I don't feel so bad. Now, some other names here, a little easier. We have Dave Kroupa, Cari Farver, and of course, as I mentioned, Golyar. These are the three main players in this case. So again, Omaha,
There's
Nebraska.
also Amy Flora.
Amy Flora, which is the
She comes in.
Yeah.
She becomes more important later on in the story, but she's also a big player.
yeah. We have, of course, numerous police and other people. But yeah, so we have a few main players. This case seems like it should be simple with only that number of people, but this is wild. This is just one of those cases where you start looking at it like, all right, this is okay. And then you get into it and you're like, I can't believe that somebody could behave this way. It's just beyond what other criminals have done.
It becomes so complicated. It's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, it was we'll get to it, it was a whole full-time job in addition to, like, the criminal behavior was a full-time job.
It is. I very rarely use this term because it has so many negative connotations to me, but it's a crazy case.
It's
Crazy.
if anyone is, it really is. Yeah.
I hate to label anybody, but this particular case, crazy.
Yeah, well, she's not crazy, but the case is, the case is just,
she's not, but this case is just way out there.
it's one of those where you have to double check the sources to make sure it's not a fantasy, right? Like,
But it's not.
yeah, it's a real,
It's a real case.
I've started into some cases before, where like the Daniel LaPlante case, the guy was ostensibly hiding in the wall, and I looked into it. I'm like, the guy was never in a wall, right? There was no guy hiding in a wall for months. There was other things he did that were criminal, but a little bit of investigation, and you realize that wasn't true. But in this one, the more you dig in, the more you see that absolutely happened, as we're going to describe. It was absolutely real, and I don't know how.
You could, I mean, if you tried, you really couldn't make this much stuff up.
No.
And connect these many pieces to it. Yeah.
No, if a movie came out, a real, like a true story movie, they would have to omit so much stuff that actually happened, and they could keep in like 100% everything that they include be accurate, but they'd have to leave so much stuff out, and it would still be, people would just be like, that couldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Like, it did. It did.
It really does seem like a fantasy, like it was written for a movie.
Yeah.
A pretty good movie. I would watch the movie.
I'd watch that.
It'd be a lot of plot twists and stuff.
Yeah, like a modern, like a modern movie, like after The Sixth Sense, we see this kind of flood of movies with surprising twists.
Yeah.
This is better than that.
Yeah.
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 Twist.
So for this case, we move back to 2012 to an auto repair shop in Omaha, Nebraska. Dave Kroupa works there. He had recently broken up with his girlfriend, Amy Flora, who you mentioned. He was looking to date again. this is something we'll talk about, I guess, throughout this video. But Dave Kroupa seemed like he was a bit of what they call a player, right? He had a lot of short-term and casual romantic interests.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much into the hookup lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently his relationship with Amy had been fairly long-term and serious. They had a kid together, and then she kicked him out, and he was like, all right, I'm free.
They'd been together 12 years, if I remember correctly.
I think so. There was a very long-term relationship, very committed relationship, and then they were done, and she kicked him out, and he got his own place not far from his work, and just was like, I'm free, I can go do whatever I want. And he just started, hitting up in 2012. Dating apps were starting to become way more acceptable, because internet dating, I think prior to about 2012, was kind of that hush-hush, dirty, like, shh.
I'm surprised that he did so well even in 2012, because that was still kind of early in dating. But now it's normalized. So.
Yeah, it's been so normalized over the and I think that our smartphones are the things that really drove that. In 2008 when Apple came out with the iPhone, like that really drove it. And the like, we can take all this stuff everywhere. It's what killed your dream.
Yeah, it really was. I could have been sitting there scheduling all kinds of stuff, and then smartphones.
And then smartphones came along. People just have access to their calendar right in the palm of their hand. And
Terrible.
And then they could go to, download an app, as they became known at that point. We all know that. Download an app to do dating stuff. It became really, part of culture at that point, and started becoming more accessible. So 2012, I think there were a lot of apps like Tinder and Grande coming out that people were starting to use a lot more of. And those are just kind of hookup apps rather than like going on serious dates. And I think that's the kind of thing that Dave was really interested in at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely on the more casual side. And Liz Golyar was the first person he met, right? Yeah. So she was on there as well. He said that she was very pretty. He was attracted right away. And he told her, I imagine he told a lot of people this, he wanted to see other women.
Yeah.
So this, he was pretty clear about what he was willing to do.
It.
Yeah.
He was upfront with it. He's like straight up like, look, this is casual. Like, I don't want anything, no strings.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Liz would be on and off if she was okay with that. She said she's okay with it, but on and off about we should move in together, or we should, be a little bit more serious about this, which of course frustrated Dave. We see that all throughout this case. But I think it's 6 months until he meets somebody else that's at least notable that we're going to obviously talk about. So for 6 months, they've kind of got this. At times, she wants more, but he doesn't, and they're kind of back and forth with that.
Right, and they're together and then they're not, and then they're together and then they're not, and he's seeing other women the entire time. Mm-hmm. Like, he's dating quite a bit.
Yeah, nothing super out of the ordinary with Golyar, based on the reports we hear, like up to the point where Cari Farver gets introduced. So Cari.
And I think that Dave wasn't really, like, he was having fun with it, but it wasn't like a cad, like, oh, he's dating multiple women all at the same time. Like, he was upfront and honest with every one of them. Mm-hmm. He was like, look, I'm just looking to have some fun. If you want to hang out and date, if, sex is on the table, that's great. If we're just going to have a couple of dates here or there, that's fine too. He was just really, really just looking to have a good time and hang out. Mm-hmm. And he was honest with it. So, I think that is a kind of a point in his favor. But he was...
Yeah, he didn't really do anything to bring this on, like what happens. Like he was straightforward.
At the same time, I think research supports this based on what I've seen. I've never really seen much good come out of that kind of hookup lifestyle. Obviously, he's having fun, and this is what he wants. So that's whatever that people want. But at the same time, I think it causes more problems than not if you're kind of doing that casual, no commitment kind of thing. And it obviously happens a lot. We see it on TV and in movies and stuff all the time. A lot of people do it. But I just, professionally, I've never seen anybody have a good experience with that. Probably just because those people are coming to counseling. Maybe I'm biased in that way. But even, people that I've known, I never really see a good outcome from a casual kind of thing. It seems like somebody always has an expectation that's not met, and then they don't realize it, and then there's fights and arguments and dramatic situations and stuff. And I just, I don't know that I could ever, kind of be on board with that, knowing that it just never really seems to have a good outcome.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's a passion mechanism in human beings where, like, I mean, there's a lot of songs written about that right over the years. Like the early stages of love, they're intoxicating. You know, the Beach Boys, Beatles, like going all the way back, we see just a lot of songs about early love.
Yeah.
Nothing about long-term commitment. Not many, right? There's something
Very few.
Yeah, very few.
Very few songs about that. We've been together for 40 years.
Let's watch TV tonight. There's a new show on Netflix. Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, that is intoxicating, and some people, that's such a rush that they keep seeking it over and over. So it's a little bit like an addiction. So I think there's some overlap with addiction. And then I think some people, you know, they get too close to that fire and they get pulled into the black hole, and now they want a commitment. You know, it leads, you know, passion can lead to commitment. So, you know, that's the attraction mechanism. So I think people just play it dangerously.
I mean, if we go into the triad of love, the triangle theory of love, there's passion, intimacy, and commitment are the three triangles. So, you know, if it just starts out with passion and then we learn some intimacy and then we decide we want to be there, get all three. But for Dave, I think he was just kind of looking for the passion. He'd been in a committed relationship for 12 years that may not have had much passion at that point. And he was just looking to try and have some fun with it. And like I was saying, I don't put any onus on him for any of what happened, and I don't put any kind of negative connotation on him because he was honest about it with everyone that he dated. Like there's this the Sam Malone mentality. If we go back to the 1980s and Cheers,
yeah.
He has no idea.
No.
Jeff,
So
no
there's
idea.
this TV show about a bar.
Yeah.
I know the characters. Like I have a picture of it. Never seen any of the episodes.
Actually, it doesn't sound like it would be a great show, but it's actually very good.
Actually, it's a very, very good
And the
show.
spin-off, Frasier, was surprisingly good.
Frasier was really good.
coming back.
Terrible
Frasier's, yeah.
terrible psychology, but a really good show itself.
What I always liked about Frasier was the 50-cent words that they wove into every script. And you could tell that Kelsey Grammer didn't know what those words were.
Some of them had no idea.
And David Hyde Pierce, I think his name.
David Hyde Pierce.
Yeah.
It's like he pronounced some of them, and sometimes he mispronounced them
Yeah.
because nobody knew how to pronounce them.
And used them in a connotation that, like a context that was totally off. Like I noticed that too. Like it wasn't, they weren't always careful with that. But I think they needed to round those bases every episode because that was a key part. Yeah. Like Vera in Cheers, you never saw her.
Yeah.
That was a gimmick. In Frasier, it was those 50-cent words, fancy words he would put in.
But I think Sam Malone in that case is an example of the kind of the cad that I was kind of mentioning. Like he would date like anyone. He would throw the current relationship over just to go find the new pretty girl, and he would lie, cheat, and steal to try and have those relationships. But Dave Kroupa wasn't doing that. He wasn't lying to anybody about anything. He was just upfront, like, look, I just want to have some fun.
Yeah, and actually Cheers is an excellent reference because when that show was new, like I remember watching it when it first came out, I think it was Thursday night lineup for NBC, with The Cosby Show and Family Ties and Night Court, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah.
We're all on 8 to 10. I think Cosby Show was the lead into that series. But a lot of people did not like Cheers for that reason. They thought that there was too much of a hint of casual sex, or really it was pretty direct. I mean, it wasn't, they made it pretty clear that's what was happening.
I mean, Dan Fielding on Night Court was way worse than Sam.
Yeah. Well, Night Court, I think, might have been, was Night Court the 9:30 spot? I think that might have been like the later.
That was the late prime time.
Yeah. So NBC was dominant through that era with that Thursday night lineup. That was such a great lineup for them. But we talked about before in the Back to the Future how Family Ties was so important, such a huge show. Yeah, very influential. But yeah, so Sam Malone aggravated some people with his behavior, and I think Frasier in that show was even a little promiscuous in Cheers.
Later on, yeah.
Yeah.
He was brought in as kind of a very straight-laced anti-Sam. Like Sam was kind of like a dumb guy, and I think the term we would use today is himbo. And he was not a very intelligent guy, but he was just a pretty boy. So Frasier was supposed to be the opposite of that. Supposed to be like the very super intellectual, very sensitive man in opposition, and then eventually just started becoming part of the cast and leaning into the hijinks.
Yeah. Yeah, he really took that. Kelsey Grammer really took that character and made him into something.
Yeah.
It was marvelous. Yeah, and like I said, it is coming back. As I understand, Frasier's coming back to TV.
That's what I understand. And Kelsey Grammer, David Hyde Pierce would also play brothers on Simpsons.
Yeah, and one of my favorite episodes where they were together. I don't know how many they appeared together. It wasn't that many, right? That they were.
It was
Sideshow Bob.
7 or 8.
Was it that? Okay, it was more than I thought. But there was one line that always stuck with me. I think it might have been the first episode they appeared together, where Sideshow Bob was kind of admonishing. What was the other? I forget the other.
Cecil.
Cecil, right?
It was Cecil, yes.
Cecil. He was admonishing him for his career choices, and he said something about like how he always wanted to be a clown. They spent so many years in clown college, and Cecil said something to the effect of, "How dare you refer to Yale that way?"
Don't talk about Yale that way.
It was perfect. Like it was magic. That show's magic. Simpsons is one of the best shows on TV. Underrated. Even though it is well liked, I would still say it's underrated.
Yeah. I agree.
It's a very sophisticated humor, and we talked about this before. It only appeals to a certain audience, but that audience is very loyal. Like they watch every episode. So either way, so we see that a woman named Cari Farver owned a Ford Explorer. Right, so already she's got some problems. And not surprisingly, she has to take it into the shop for maintenance.
Yeah, and it was brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to be expected with the Ford Explorer. But
Yeah. Now, the Ford Expedition, I had one of those, but Explorers, I don't think they're great vehicles. Now they're probably much better than they were back then.
they'll explore every mechanic shop in the area.
That's right. So I think it was according to Dave. I think he said that there was a little spark between he and Cari when she came in. Like, I guess he was like, I don't know. I picture him like leaning over the vehicle and saying, "Oh, this will cost you a lot of money," or whatever the standard mechanic line is. And then there's just this moment where their eyes connect, and
That's the pickup line. It'll cost you $100. He talked at some point about how they were, physically close to each other because they're looking at the vehicle. And that, of course, that's going to happen, right? Between any two people. But at that point, it was kind of like, he said that he felt it and he thinks she did as well. Like, just close to each other. They felt a spark or something. And that's kind of the moment that he said he felt it.
Yeah. But then they didn't go out that day. He gave her the quote on the car. She got in the car and left.
Yeah.
And that was the end of it.
yeah, with
All right,
Cari,
we're done. See you guys later.
Right. End of the episode.
Oh wait, no, that wasn't the end of it. That wasn't the end of it. It was another dating app. A couple of days later, they matched on another dating app, and that's when Dave was like, "Yes, I know I've met this person, kismet. Like it must be a thing."
And I think they even messaged each other like, "Hey, I remember you," or "You look familiar," or whatever. Yeah, I think she came into the shop shortly after that, like just because or something.
Yeah, so kind of a good luck, or for Cari, notably bad luck, but just amazing that they actually connected. I don't know if you remember when Craigslist they used to have personals. I think they're banned, right, because of murders and
Craigslist
such.
killer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some people lost their lives. But there was a section in Craigslist, I don't know if it's still there, called Misconnections.
Yeah. Right.
What are I've seen that sometimes, and I'm like, what are the chances? Like, they're like, "Hey, I was at the bus station, and you looked at my feet. Like, you were wearing something red." Like, what? How do you expect?
Guy in green sweater sitting at bus stop. You, girl in red shoes. You looked at mine. Let's meet. Like, what? How do you expect to?
Does that ever work even once for anybody?
I don't know. Maybe. Apparently on Craigslist it worked enough. They had to shut it down because of murders.
I guess the only way it would work is if in the moment somebody said, "Misconnection, Craigslist, check it out," and then walked away. Like, that's the only way I could see that ever happening. But yeah, either way,
The Misconnections is still on Craigslist.
it's the personals that are going.
We should have had Sam check on that for us.
So there are a surprising amount of recent posts on there. Okay, now this is just for Delaware. So consider there's relatively few people in Delaware, right, compared to other states. But I mean, there's today's
we're a small state. We're definitely a small state.
today is August 25th, right? Am I right on the date?
I think that's
Anybody?
right.
As we're recording this, yes.
Yeah. All right. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 just for today on the misconnections. And I haven't looked at them yet. The title is Homeless Gal Holding Sign 824. I haven't looked at it yet, but I don't think I want to.
just gonna ignore that and move on.
Pretend it didn't happen. But if you're looking for anything, exciting to do ever, might as well just look at these.
I always thought there was a good research study in the misconnections. If you aggregated them from the entire whatever Craigslist does, I guess the whole country or world, I don't know. I don't know how many nations it's in,
know.
but I know it's big in the United States. And aggregate all those things together and look for themes like a qualitative study. I think you'd find something interesting in there. I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
But at this point in our story, not on Craigslist, this is a rom-com, right? This is a meet cute thing. Like they met at the these two met at the auto shop, and then Tinder showed them love, brought them together. This is great. So they did meet up, and they went on a date, and they ended back up at Dave's place.
Yeah.
And this was Dave's greatest shining moment, was when Cari said, I don't want anything serious. If this is going to happen, you're not my boyfriend.
And he could hear angelic music
And
playing.
yeah,
at
there
that
was
moment.
a chorus came up. Again, we're in the midst of this rom-com moment. Oh.
He would later say that he felt like he hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
But, I wonder if he played it cool in the moment, like, oh, that's terrible, but okay.
You know what?
I guess if we have to.
Yeah. If you insist,
If you insist.
I'll
you
try
set
not
the
to.
tone. You set the tone. I'll just go along.
Set the pace. I'll follow along. But the thing was, within within a week or so, he had given her a key to his apartment because his apartment was closer to her job than her house was.
Right.
So she was going to spend the night.
She was living like an hour away from her job, if I remember correctly. So that was pretty lucky for her. Obviously not ultimately, but lucky then to be able to live, I think, within a few blocks or a few minutes, or at least, of her job.
Mm-hmm. So, like he said, within 2 weeks, he'd given her a key to his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But they were not a couple.
She just happened to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Very casual. Yeah. So Golyar at this time, again, they're kind of on and off, having some problems. At this point, I think they were off. And she was going to his apartment to pick up, I guess, her personal belongings, right? Mm-hmm. And she passed, so Cari was leaving as Golyar was coming in. So just literally passed each other in a hallway. There was I don't think there was any meaningful contact, didn't say anything, they didn't get into a fight, that was it.
Cue the suspense movie music. Wow.
Yeah. I think
Words are hard. Sorry about that. I screwed that joke up.
That's all right. We got it. We knew where you were going with it too.
Cue the suspense music. Oh, there we go.
I think if from one account and I think this was actually from Dave, he had said that his phone started blowing up just with texts and calls and stuff with Liz saying, I got to come over now and get the stuff, get it. And Dave said that Liz knew that was his night to go out with somebody else. So Liz was aware that somebody else was over there and was still just, contacting him a lot, which we would see a theme of that throughout. So that wasn't suspicious. So she knew, and he was getting annoyed. He's like, hey, listen, I'm with somebody else. You know that, you can't come over. And I guess eventually he just got tired of it and said, fine, come get your stuff. Told Cari, and Cari was like, all right, So I think that at that point, Cari either decided she was going to leave or thought, it might be awkward if I'm here and somebody else is
She had to go
over.
to work that morning.
Wasn't she staying over at that point?
She was, but it was in the morning, and she was leaving for work.
Oh, okay.
So she had work that day. As she's leaving the house to go to work, Liz was coming in to pick up her stuff, and it kind of just crossed in the hallway.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a big deal, right? And no one would really think it was a big deal, except for apparently Golyar. So we see here, this was November 13, 2012. So David kissed Cari on her way out of the door and he told her he would see her later. He receives a text message, and in his mind, she's at work. right? So he receives a text message saying, I want to move in. Like Cari's saying, I want to move in.
Right.
And he's like, we've already talked about this. The answer is no. Like he's kind of holding the line. Again, he's fairly consistent.
Right. He's very consistent.
Absolutely.
And immediately, Cari's texts become just vitriol. Just hate. You've ruined my life. You've destroyed my life. I hate you. Why? You're terrible, awful. And it just she started blowing his phone up.
Just a complete switch from really, good relationship, and they really liked each other. She was really nice to him.
Yeah. Remember, this is from the phone. This is from Cari's phone.
Yeah.
So,
because I imagine at that point he had her number programmed into his smartphone, so it would come up as Cari.
Yeah, he presumed it was Cari that was sending him the message, just like any person would.
Possibly with her picture at that point, because our smartphones can do those kinds of things.
Yeah, so among all the other messages he received from her phone, one said, I hate you, I'm dating someone else, I don't want to see you anymore, go away. So a very sudden turn in their casual relationship. So Dave came home that night and he found that Cari wasn't there.
Now we don't know for sure if it was Liz or if it was Cari. There's indication that Cari was, alive for at least a few days after that, maybe, or at least a day or something like that. So it's possible that it was from Cari, or it's possible Liz had stolen the phone or something like that. So we're not really sure, as far as I know, unless you guys have any other information.
From what I was able to read, after the 13th, nobody had seen Cari.
There was a video on her phone of her Explorer getting vandalized or something that they showed at the court. I think they showed it in the court proceedings, or they showed it somewhere. And my understanding is that was either that day or the next day. I don't know what the date of that video was, though. So there's an indication that she was that she was alive after that, but I'm not quite sure the timetable of that. This was something that we'll get into it, but this was something that the computer analyst would gather from part of that.
Yeah, at least he got to do that job.
That's right.
That could have been you, Mike. We could have been talking about you now.
Could have been. But it's unfortunate.
So 2 days later, so this will be November 15, we see that Dave Kroupa receives more text with similar language. So he thought that, okay, what's done is done. Oh, well. And now he's getting these additional messages, which really seem superfluous. Like, what was the point of these transmissions? Now, Cari Farver's mother started receiving strange text messages from Cari's phone as well. Right? So now it's, I don't know if Cari Farver's mother was in communication with Dave at that time, but we see these two separate transmissions.
I don't think she was in communication with Dave at that point. I think she would contact him like a few months later, briefly.
When they realized
Yeah. But at that point, I don't think she had any contact with Dave. And one of the first texts was, "I got a job in Kansas."
to the mother.
To the mother, yes.
Right.
Cari said,
I got to leave immediately.
"Yeah, I've got a job in Kansas. I've got to leave immediately. I need you to watch my son."
Yeah, and her employer also received that same transmission.
Yeah.
Right.
I quit because I got a job in Kansas.
Yeah, so Nancy Rainey, that's Cari's mother, she tried to call, but there was no answer, which also seemed pretty odd. You just sent a text message, why wouldn't you answer the phone?
Her son, Cari's son, would say that she had applied to a job in Kansas, which made the Cari's mom, I guess just kind of, okay, well, maybe she did, but still, this is suspicious. This is weird. Why isn't she answering the phone? Why is this so abrupt? Why isn't it was out of character for Cari to do something like that.
Yeah, so Nancy Rainey did contact the police, and they started treating it as a disappearance, which is what it was.
Yeah, and they were really interested in what was happening and really set to investigate this right up until they were told that she had been diagnosed with bipolar.
I think that's actually one of the most important elements of this case. I think it's actually one of the central themes of the case, which is, when a child goes missing, the police always pay attention. right? Always. Search parties, 200 people wearing orange or yellow or green walking through fields, right? When an adult goes missing, you get a toned down response, but you still get somebody going out there and looking around.
Right.
When a adult who is presumed to be mentally ill goes missing, you get nothing. You get, oh, well, they'll show up. Don't worry. We'll probably find them in a mental hospital or prison.
It happens.
Oh, they were off their medication. Just, we'll figure it out.
I mean, it depends. And it depends on how popular the missing person is and sometimes the gender. Right? If a middlingly popular man disappears, you get a little bit of a response. If a very popular female disappears, there are people with day glow night vests on out in every field in the surrounding area looking to see if they can find something, almost as if it was a child. But if there's a mental health issue there, the police are like, well, we'll see what we can do, and they'll check like under the bridges.
Yeah,
Again,
what they will do
they'll
is
look for suicide spots, and
right, on the way to wherever they're going, they'll look.
and we were heading down to a crime scene over there. Let's swing by the bridge over there, see if anybody jumped off today. Nope. All right, keep going.
Yeah. Now, bipolar is an illness that I think gets thrown around a lot. It's actually fairly rare when you compare it to depression, which is the kind of like the sister major mood disorder. So those are the two biggies. MDD. There's also like persistent depressive disorder, but MDD and bipolar are the big ones. So it's not common. It's a devastating disorder. Bipolar is devastating.
Yeah, major depressive disorder diagnosed in between 12 and 15 million people in the United States every year. The number one most diagnosed single mental health disorder. Anxiety disorders as a whole are like 20 million, but that's broken down over a variety of them, including OCD, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, all of these variety of them, even trichotillomania, which is just the fun one to say.
Which is actually
an
quite
obsessive
similar.
compulsive.
Yeah, it's quite similar to
disorder.
OCD, actually. But yeah, so, bipolar, I think people throw it around, like they throw the term borderline around. Like, oh, they're borderline, oh, they're bipolar. Two completely different disorders, although technically someone can have both.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if the police really understood what bipolar was. Usually, in these types of cases, they focus on the mania, and they assume the person went manic or hypomanic and, was off gambling or having sex or spending or running around thinking they're going to, develop some new machine that's going to revolutionize society. All the, different kind of like manic fantasies.
Trying to start a fudge shop and
Right.
I make really good fudge. I'm going to go make a fudge shop. I'm going to go get some money. I got to go to Vegas and get a whole bunch of money. No follow through.
No.
We're trying to start a podcast or something, for
Yeah, I'm going to
example.
start up.
Yeah. It's the personification of grandiosity.
Try to say something, Jeff.
Personification of grandiosity and impulsivity, right? They come together, and you have somebody that's really highly confident, but no commitment to the plans that they're developing rapidly.
That manic episodes tend to be like maybe a week long, and once they fade, the person goes back to typical functionality. What people tend to think of when somebody says, "Oh, bipolar," is this rapid switching between moods all over and rapid cycling can happen in bipolar, but it's actually very rare.
Yeah, there's actually even an ultra rapid cycling. But yeah, I think those are kind of overplayed. They don't happen that often.
Yeah, they don't. Like, people will be like, I got a diagnosis with bipolar because 1 minute I'm up and next minute I'm down. Like, that's not bipolar. No. That is not bipolar, not at all.
Even when something seems like ultra rapid cycling, it's probably not.
Right.
It's substance use. It could be other factors. It could be iatrogenic. Like clinicians throw around DID a lot, dissociative identity disorder, and they throw around ultra rapid cycling a lot. Right. And convincing people that, if they're feeling good 1 second and not good the next second, they have bipolar disorder. Again, a devastating major mood disorder. I think it needs a more careful diagnosis than just, up and down, bipolar.
See, here's where I see there's a big issue with a lot of the bipolar diagnoses in this country is in rehabs. Like, there are statistics that show people who are diagnosed with a substance use disorder are 15 times more likely to have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and vice versa. Like people with bipolar diagnosis are 15 times more likely to have a substance use issue. And where I see that it being an issue is an intake into rehabs. Person comes into rehab and they're asked all sorts of questions by people who don't have degrees and don't have the ability to diagnose, who are then giving them a diagnostic label. Mm-hmm. That diagnostic label is then rubber stamped by a psychiatrist who sees this person for 5 minutes at the beginning of their stay.
Yeah, sometimes they don't even see them. Sometimes they're just reading a little summary.
Yeah, and the questions they get very much encapsulate the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. They'll get questions that say, at any time in your life, have you gone a week without sleeping and felt this grandiosity? And they'll go through all these symptoms checklist, and the person will be like, yep. It's like, okay, that's a manic episode. Have you felt depressive episode? And blah, 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 and go through all the depressive stuff. Yep, a depressive episode. The question they never, ever, ever ask is, were you on drugs at the time? Mm-hmm. And if they ask that question, because I have asked that question, I worked in an inpatient rehab for 2 years and had people come up with a bipolar. I have a bipolar diagnosis. I'm like, okay. Well, I went over the manic episode with them. Like, have you ever had that? Like, yeah. I was like, were you using meth at the time? I'm like, yeah. Okay. That's not a manic episode then.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't know. Because
in the DSM, it says it can't be the result of substance use.
Right. What I mean is, like, somebody could be using substances and be manic at the same time, but you have to separate the drugs out to know that.
Right.
So I would always assume, somebody comes in, they have nothing, and then build from there. Okay.
Right.
The drugs are probably the most likely explanation. If you're not on drugs, let's see if that repeats. But no, they just say, oh, you're using meth and you're bipolar.
Yeah, and it's like better safe than sorry, but the bipolar diagnosis on there. But then that diagnosis is going to follow them. And they're going to say, I've got bipolar, and they're going to tell everybody they've got bipolar. They're also going to tell everybody they got depression. It's one or the other. It's not both. Like, it's either major depressive disorder or bipolar disorder. As soon as a manic episode comes into place, it becomes bipolar disorder.
Yeah, and it can never go back. It's one of those rare situations in the DSM where if you get diagnosed with bipolar, you can never go back to MDD. Yeah. It's one way.
Because when I teach, when I've taught the abnormal psychology, of course, the textbooks talk about unipolar depression and bipolar depression. It's either one pole, just depression, or bipolar, meaning both poles, both sides of it. So as soon as a manic episode comes in, it becomes bipolar disorder. But so many people, I've asked them, like, have you ever experienced that without having it be drug induced? No. Then I don't think it's bipolar. You challenge your diagnosis the next time you're out and got significant clean time. Mm. And then there was the one guy who went into a manic episode the day after he came out of a detox and spent the next week not sleeping at all. Like, they gave him enough trazodone to knock out a horse, and he got up and went and started stacking stones. Yeah, just making little rock formations. It's weird, but yeah, he had no need for sleep at that point.
Mm. Bipolar, and depression or mania, both elements of bipolar, really have almost a supernatural characteristic to them when it comes to the ability. Like, a person with bipolar can feel more depressed than we could ever feel. Mm-hmm. It's not beyond science, but it's beyond our personal understanding. Yeah. Like, we can't feel that way. And the mania, they can stay up 5-6 nights. They'll stay up until they go psychotic, right? And then they'll continue to stay up even after the psychotic. Hospitalization is often indicated if you're up that long. Really, you could argue even 3 days you can be psychotic. Yeah. But yeah, it's incredible. Like, it seems superhuman. But you'll go in, like, there are 4 days they're up and they're just wide awake and they're still have plans to beat the casinos and all these things. Like, they're still just going.
It's like, I'm going to make millions in real estate.
So it's a lot more noticeable than how perhaps the media or movies or even police officers might have us think, right? That it's just off their medication, they're just having some kind of a bipolar something, or but perhaps it's a bit more noticeable, or maybe something you should look into a little bit more than just here's a label, let's dismiss it, and we'll not really look into your claim here too much.
Yeah, we see a lot of misunderstanding of that particular disorder. And I can imagine when the police heard that for the first time, they're like, well, that explains it. Bipolar.
Oh, yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah, bipolar. Yeah. Let's not even bother looking.
And when they talked to Dave, too, and they figured out that it was they had broken up and she was angry at him, still further, oh, we've seen this before, broke up, she's angry, she's not talking to you now, she kind of left for a little bit, she's mad, whatever. Further dismissing, the possibility that maybe she is missing.
What was interesting was at the time that Cari went missing, her mom called the police. She called her local police, and they were like, "Oh, well, look," which was closer to where Cari actually lived, and the police that talked to Dave were his local police after he called them about the continued harassment and these harassing messages, and he said he was getting 60 plus text messages a day, 100 emails.
Right.
A day.
Yeah, so after that, there's a few the floodgates open.
Yeah.
So really, Cari was a suspect and like a person they were concerned about because she was missing. But
there's two different police departments that weren't talking to each other.
2 different states, I believe, too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so, with actual, now I think Cari did have bipolar, right? I mean, that's the understanding she did actually.
I understand that she did, and she was taking medication, and
Right.
she had, at least on one previous occasion during a manic episode, had gone off for a day or two.
Which, yeah, I would expect that.
Yeah.
That's consistent with bipolar. But in terms of treating bipolar in real life, what you see, it's not glamorous. It's not like in the movies with the diagnosing, with the ups and downs. It's if you're with a client for a long time, it's actually a pretty slow progression. You can see the depression coming for 2, sometimes even 3 weeks away. Certainly, many symptoms come available at 2, and at 1, you should be seeing something. Mania, pretty close to the same. Sometimes it doesn't seem like you get as much notice with mania because they're feeling good, and they're not as likely to report symptoms. Like, I'm feeling really good.
Right.
What kind of plans you having? Well, I'm going to buy a lot of diamonds. Okay, well, let's talk about some safety protocols, safety plans. But you're right. Very, very often in my experience, it's been people have been just, I feel okay right now. Like I feel like kind of middling, like they're coming out of a depression, or depression was several months ago, and now they're just kind of like, you know what, I'm good. Like, I'm really good. And then like the next week, it's like, I'm really excited. There's some good opportunities coming up in my life. And the week after that, they're just like, I'm off to Vegas, baby. And it's like, it's just a slow and then real quick uptick. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. You can see it. I mean, you could graph it. It would have a clear path. Not kind of like the haphazard, feeling good, feeling bad in the same minute thing that I think it gets portrayed that way in movies.
Yeah, I think it's portrayed that way in movies and TV shows very often, and it's just not. It tends to not be what bipolar is.
I had a friend of mine had a roommate, and this was before I knew anything about mental health, before I started grad school or anything, and it turned out that this friend was bipolar and wasn't aware of it, or it hadn't come up before. He just got the diagnosis. I'm not really sure what happened, but it was very similar to that it was a gradual kind of thing, and then one day he's in a closet and he's like, I'm making movies out of here and I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and you're like, what are you doing right now? Let's talk, and then it was working side jobs, many of them, and making all kinds of money, and lots of gambling, of course, as well. And then, not too long after that, it was the downhill, and there was a lot of concerns, and very difficult, of course, to watch because, like you guys were saying, at the mania, they don't want any help. Life's perfect. This is great. I can do this all my life, and then you get down, and you guys, we all see it a lot, I'm sure, but when you're depressed, you don't want to do anything, right? And not getting help, of course, is part of not wanting to do anything. So you just stay in the slump, and you're sleeping. You're not moving around a whole lot. You're not interacting with people, and it's just a big recipe for disaster on both ends of that.
Yeah, and then when you get to the extremes, the psychosis comes in many cases, and that causes a whole new level of problems. And I don't know if Cari had psychosis. We don't really know anything except she probably had bipolar. That's all I'm aware of. So we see this flood of messages again. Cari's mother and Dave, and as you said, Mike, we have separate law enforcement agencies kind of investigating her as a potential criminal, and as a potential victim. Nobody's communicating at this point. So, as this is going on, we see that Golyar contacts Dave and says, "Hey, I'm receiving messages from Cari Farver. Getting threatened. She talks about her garage being spray painted. There's a threatening message on it. She reported this to the police."
I think that's the video that you're talking about, Jeff. It wasn't Cari's vehicle; it was Liz's vehicle that had been spray painted.
It was the Explorer.
What?
That was on 2020. There was a 2020 thing. This was from that the computer, not investigator, the computer analyst had gotten this video from a camcorder that was Cari's, but was in Liz's apartment after they were able to go in and search it. But there also was the picture of the graffiti inside of Liz's garage.
Right.
Yeah, which she reported to the police. So I guess now what happened here is they bond over a little bit over Cari. Like, oh, we're both being stalked. It's not really clear why Golyar would be stalked. So I'm kind of surprised. Maybe Dave did think to himself, well, that seems odd. Why would what's Golyar having to do with this? Like, why
I'm sure
would
he thought that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what's the connection
I'm sure
here?
he started thinking that, but then like any woman who even liked one of his posts on Facebook started getting Cari text messages.
Yeah.
So he kind of, when he started seeing that, the question of, well, why is she targeting Liz, out the window?
Yeah. Right.
Because it's now Cari's targeting any woman who comes into my life. Of course she is.
Dave would say that he would get messages from people he went to high school, women he went to high school with, that he hadn't talked to in many, many years. That they have their own families and everything, and he would get messages saying, "Why is this person contacting me, harassing me?" Why? So you're right, Mike. It's, there would have been I don't know how many other people, but probably dozens, if not more.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of messaging going on. So through all this, Dave and Golyar start dating again.
Yeah.
So they have a common enemy, I guess. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they're together, still casual. And we see that now Cari, so again, the police are like, hey, bipolar, what are you going to do? But now Cari starts missing a lot of family events, which she would not have missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She missed her own birthday. And then the big one that her family got was she missed her father's funeral. Mm-hmm. And Cari and her father were very, very close.
And her son's 16th birthday as
she missed
well.
her son's
So just,
16th birthday.
Huge events.
Yeah. And her family would send texts, be like, hey, we just want you home. Mm-hmm. And she wouldn't respond. I think her son texted her at one point after his 16th birthday and was like, hey. And the response was, hey, little man. And he's like, if you're really my mom, answer these 3 questions. And there was no response.
Right. What was my middle name?
Yeah. It's like, what's my middle name? Who's my best friend?
I don't remember
And
the other one.
I don't remember the other third question.
Either way, no response, yeah.
But yeah, no response to any of those questions.
Right. There was at some point a friend of Cari's, Cari, from her number, had contacted this friend saying, I'm ready to come home.
Right.
And the same thing. It was just, I'm ready to come home. I made a mistake, whatever. But then just at some point, just no more communication.
And her friend was like, I'll meet you anywhere. Here's where I will be. Come see me.
No judgment, just come home.
No judgment, just I'll show up and I'll be there. And nothing. She didn't show up. And go ahead.
Well, when I heard that, it made me. I don't know anything else about that situation, but it made me wonder if Liz was in regret at that point. Like, I made such a big mistake. I could just end it now, come clean, and everything. I'd deal with the consequences, but this is where it would end. I wonder if that was going through her mind genuinely, or if this was another kind of tactic or technique to get over on somebody.
I don't know. I can't really speak to what she was thinking about that one.
I wish
but
I
know that very shortly after that, she put very shortly after that, a message came up on Cari's Facebook page saying, I'm not coming home. I don't want to, like,
I'm not missing. I just don't want to come home.
I just don't want to come home. And that would be to police, would be like, well, see, she's not missing. She just doesn't want to come home.
Yeah. Yeah. So we see, again, continued messages. Some of them have bad grammar.
Oh, yeah.
Cari did not.
Apparently, Cari was like me, like full sentences with punctuation in text messages. I am one of those psychos who insists on putting proper spelling and grammar. Like when it was a T9 kind of T9 world where you had limited number of characters, you could only get like a whole 25 characters into a text message. I understand abbreviating YOU to the letter U and abbreviating the word for to the number. Like, I understand that on the T9. We don't live in that world anymore. Like, we have full keyboards. You can type a full, and with swipe abilities on things, you can type a full 25 word message faster than you could type 25 characters on a T9. There's no excuse for it, in my opinion. Proper grammar. And I think Cari was the same way. But these messages that were coming from her did not have proper grammar.
That might...
or punctuation at all.
That might save us, and I don't know, Dr. Grande, if you're the same way, but that might save us if anybody ever got a hold of our device. They're like, wait a minute, this is bad grammar. Couldn't possibly be them. So I think that's the way to go.
Like, I think one of those messages, like without punctuation, is really bad because it was like, so like, she's a fat pig, and I hope maybe she'll kill herself or something. And it's like, had no apostrophe in the she'll. It was supposed to be she'll as in she will. No apostrophe, it's just shell. Maybe shell will kill herself. Like,
how appalling.
Like this, it's terrible. It's a different word entirely. Without that apostrophe, it's shell, not she'll.
Yeah. Yeah, she didn't respect the grammar at all. And this was a clue. Right now, people were starting to put things together a little bit. This one creepy thing, well, a lot of creepy things happen here, but one in particular that I thought was interesting was Dave was sitting in a chair. I pictured like a recliner.
Yeah, he said it was a recliner.
Yeah, he's watching TV, and he receives a text message that describes what he was wearing and how he was sitting in the chair. And this is in, presumably, his apartment.
Yeah.
So...
And I think that might have been one of those occasions where Shayna was actually there, like with him in the apartment. Like Liz is sitting on the couch, he's sitting in the recliner, and he gets his text message going, "I'm watching you, you're sitting in the recliner." And he's like, what the hell?
Was there a movie or show?
The calls are coming from inside the house, man.
Yeah. Yeah, what was that? What was that movie?
Oh.
A long time ago, right? I think it's been used a few times as a device, but I can't remember the original.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I remember when it happened, it was all the talk in school. It was something that came out when I was younger. That spooked everybody, right? The idea that you could be inside a house and
right.
Because two phones was pretty new at that time, right? Having two phones it was relatively new.
I mean, it's based on an urban legend, but it's been seen in movies like I Can See You, I think was one of the movies. But yeah, there's a lot of instances of that because going back to the day, scary stories about babysitters being home alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's almost like the guy with the hook hand,
right?
Or the freeway light flasher. You hear that old story? You've heard that one, Jeff?
Yeah.
There's a guy actually in the back seat. That one's creepy. I always check my back seat before I go anywhere. When it's dark, I don't think anybody can get in the back seat of my car, but
there was a case in Australia of a family who, it's not clear what happened because nothing was released on it, but some people believe it was some type of like folie à deux, like a shared psychotic disorder, where they traveled and then, they were trying to escape. Like they're on some type of farm. They farmed berries of some type or something like that. And one day they got in their vehicle and took off. But whatever it was that was affecting them started to kind of mitigate in some at different rates. So they were kind of breaking off. It was like, I think a family of 5, and they just kind of, first, like the son left. He's like, I don't know what these guys are doing. I'm out of here. Then like one of the daughters left, the other daughter left, and then the two parents. Everyone was okay eventually. The police got everybody, and and helped him out. But the one of the daughters climbed in, I think it was like an F-250 or something like that, like a pickup truck, like a cab behind it, it was a double cab or extra cab, whatever. And the guy was driving for quite some distance, and he looked around and like scared him, I imagine, scared him to death.
Yeah, I remember that case. Like, it was this really weird, like, all of a sudden the dad got really crazy paranoid and packed them all up into the car and just took off. And everybody's like, what is going on? Like, he wouldn't say anything to anybody. And she climbed in the back of this pickup truck because there was a tarp there, and she pulled it over herself. And then she like poked her head out to see where she was, and the guy just happened to catch it out of the corner of his eye. He was like, "Oh crap!"
That would have been an accident in many cases. But interestingly, the guy was really nice, really quite gracious. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Give me a heart attack. When a Stranger Calls, by the way, 1979.
Yeah, I knew it was when I was young, because I remember whenever it first happened in school, everybody was like, the call was coming from inside the house. And we were all just like, I can't believe that. It didn't take much to impress us back in that era. It was a different time. It's like, it wasn't like media products everywhere like these days. That was a big deal. Call coming from inside the house.
I mean, that trope would then get used again in like Scream, which is arguably a classic at this point.
Actually, pretty good movie.
But yeah, it's actually pretty good. Some of the later ones were not so great, but the first one was amazing.
Like Scream 46. Yeah.
Scream 327 was just terrible. It was the worst one.
I can bring a spoof into the conversation with that, though, too, with Scary Movie.
The Scary Movie franchise.
One through 5. Now, of course, you got...
The first one was the best. The second one was okay, and then they just started going downhill.
I mean, obviously, there's a big difference between number 1, number 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, right? Different directors, right? By number 3, you had the same directors as Airplane, right, with Zucker brothers. I don't know if it was both of them, now that I say that, but Wayans brothers versus Zucker brothers, that's, a big difference. So there's definitely different humor there. But I was thinking when you were saying about a kid being in the back seat, I think it's Scary Movie, I don't remember if it's 3 or 4, but the two main characters get married, and then there's this whole recurring thing in there where they're driving away and the kid's not in the back seat, and he comes running up behind it. Wait for me. And then they reverse, of course, and they hit him. And the last part, though, they didn't hit him. And then this train or this truck comes coming by and hits him. And I love those movies, though. Like, I think 3 is great. I think 4 is pretty great. I
think
great. And then 5
Anna
is
Faris
kind of
was
rough.
getting a little bit fed up with those movies, I think, at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That was kind of... The first 2, I think, she got great performance out of, and the Wayans brothers were amazing. But the third one I was like okay with, and the other ones I was just like, meh.
I think 3 was great. I quote it all the time. But the 5th one was pretty rough. Charlie Sheen, and who's the I can't think of the woman's name. He had some kind of I don't know if it was an affair or not, but he was the one. Oh, I can't think of her name now. She was in the what's the one where she's the twin? They go to summer camps.
Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan. Thank you. Yeah, she was in the 5th one, and it was kind of rough.
I just got to be honest. I haven't seen that movie since I first came out, so it's been a while. But the first 2 I've watched over and over again.
Yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah, pretty good movies, and I think that. So where are we here on this case?
The creepiest call to Dave, or the text to Dave, like, I'm watching you.
Right.
Like, and they're watching you.
There would have been a message saying, my favorite thing to do is watch you from outside or something. There was a video that they found on, ultimately came from Liz, but a video walking around the outside of Dave's apartment or something like that. And there was another one where he was sitting on the couch. I don't know if Liz was there or not, but there was another one. There's another one where he was with somebody else. And he described it as an old friend that he had been friends with for a while. And she was over there, and they're just about to go to sleep. And that was his childhood friend.
Right. Like, they had never dated. They saw each other's brother and sister.
She described them as always more than friends. But then they said they were about to go to sleep, and I didn't know what that meant. But either way, something came flying through the window. She thought it was a gunshot, and it was, another big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was definitely, the stalking element,
Yeah.
right? Not completely dissimilar from Scream and Scary Movie, and all that. Not dissimilar, except this was real life.
Yeah.
And this poor guy, what he was going through. Then I think one of the worst things that could have happened to him did. In January 2013, he ends up finding Cari Farver's Explorer, which of course he recognized because he had worked on it.
Right.
And the problem here is this is like finding a dead body. You're permanently a suspect unless they solve the case. Even though it could have just, and I think it's fully explainable, just I was walking somewhere and I saw something in the grass or the weeds or by the side of the road. But the police, they don't always think.
First person to find the body is the one who did it.
It's like,
Especially if they've got no, emotion about it.
yeah,
Yeah, behavior is definitely the biggest indicator.
Behavior's off. Just found a body and it's not weeping on the floor. It's odd.
Now, he found the Explorer. It was in the parking lot to Liz's apartment complex, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was near. It said nearby parking lot. So yeah.
Okay.
But he called the police, and I imagine they were kind of giving him the side eye, right? Like, oh, you found it. Sure you did. We'll go with that for now.
Yeah, but they took it. They searched it. They didn't find anything.
Searched it twice.
At that point, they didn't find anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for one fingerprint on a mint container.
Yeah, that they couldn't identify.
Right. Not in the database. It wasn't Cari's.
Yeah. So we see that now. The vehicle has been found. This makes people think that foul play is a greater probability than before. And you see a man 5 months after this appearance calls saying that he had seen Cari at a homeless shelter. Her mother drives out there. Wasn't there. It's just a dead end.
She drives out with the investigators, and they go in and then come back out and just kind of shake their head. Of course, she's devastated. The mom's devastated. She had some kind of hope for something.
Yeah, and then you talked about the son sends the message, which is actually pretty clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like suspect. I don't know what's going on, so I'll put this test out there, and of course there is no response.
And Carrie's mother would say often, like, she'd get a text and she'd be like, the only way I'll know this is you if you call me right now. Mm-hmm. And of course, there would never be a phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we move to August of 2013. We see there's a fire at Golyar's house. Her cat is killed, a snake, and 2 dogs. Now, a lot of people have dogs and cats. Not a lot have snakes.
Right. I've got a snake.
Do you have a snake?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. There's a red ball python.
See, my concern with a snake would be the cost of escape. Right?
He's actually was my girlfriend's before we met. It was actually one of the reasons I knew that I was going to, date this girl for a long time, because she told me the name of her snake, and it's Bosk, which is the name of the bounty hunter, one of the bounty hunters in Star Wars.
Yeah, with the long arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Trandoshan is the name of the alien race.
So that was the indicator.
And that was the indicator. She's
I
like, I have a snake. His name's Bosk. I'm like, I love you. Like, not obsessively, but at that point I was just like, oh my goodness, this is a person I'm gonna want to spend a lot of time with, which was great.
He was one of the early, was it Kenner that made the action figures? Yeah. They had the contract. It was this messed up contract that occurred. It was a terrible deal for everybody, it seems like, but they were the toy manufacturer that got the deal. They were totally ill prepared. And I think that like Boba Fett and Bosk were 2 of the early,
and IG-88
Yep.
some of the early ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were it was a terrible deal, but George Lucas had all of the rights to the merchandise because Fox didn't think it was going to do anything. Like, he was genius when he did that deal, but like many of the other deals he did were terrible. And he was like, I can have the manufacturing rights. Like, yeah, this movie's not going to do anything short with the manufacturing.
Yeah, I think he paid, was it $25,000 or something? They were just happy to get it back because Star Wars had an $11 million budget, and they were never going to get this money back. Right. So at least we get 25 back. This guy's not going to make anything. And of course, later on, he sells the company, not just because of the merchandising, but eventually for $4 billion, right?
Yeah.
To Disney.
Yeah.
$4 billion.
Like, that franchise would go on to be one of the most successful franchises in the world. And Fox was just like, oh. Like, in retrospect, we shouldn't have let him have those rights, but he did. That's like the publisher that published J.K. Rowling's first book, the Harry Potter series. She's like, can I have all the screen rights? And he's like, yeah, sure. Book's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you never know. I think,
Billions of dollars later.
right. I guess in their defense, like Star Wars is a one of a kind. Like what it did, it changed everything. Many movies are stinkers, and that probably would have been a good decision 99% of the time if so.
Especially when you have like two contemporary space epics of the time where like Flash Gordon.
Yeah, it wasn't a golden age until Star Wars.
Yeah.
Sci-fi really didn't have its time until that movie, like in terms of a wider audience.
Actually, I think Flash Gordon's came later. I could be wrong. I'll check.
That probably separates the really good directors from the okay ones, or rather the production companies or whoever makes the decisions, understanding and realizing what's going to be really great and what's probably not, and maybe being able to make good decisions about which one should we invest in, which one shouldn't we. Obviously they make mistakes, some really big mistakes, but that's probably the difference between the ones that get a really good name and the ones that don't.
Yeah, I was wrong, by the way. Flash Gordon was 3 years after Star Wars.
Okay,
It's 1980.
1980.
Yeah.
So around the time Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. It's like before Star Wars, the idea of special effects heavy movies was just frowned upon in Hollywood. Like they're like, you're gonna make a movie with special effects? That thing's not getting into onto the Oscar nom. It's not gonna get anything. And then Star Wars came out and just blew up.
Yeah, I wonder if they did a focus group. I know they do that with movies now. I think maybe even before they're done production. But I wonder if they did that in 1977 or 76, whatever, when it was,
I think they did for some of them, but I don't think they did for Star Wars.
because that might have.
It was a low budget. They were like, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be low budget, but $11 million for that time was a heavy investment for the studio. But yeah, so yeah, I remember the action figure, the long arms. Yeah, so he didn't get a lot of airtime in the.
No, he didn't. He's just looking down at somebody, at an Imperial officer in Empire. But that's my snake, and yes, he has gotten out once. But we found him within a day or so and got him back in his cage. But Liz had a snake, apparently, and a cat and 2 dogs, and they all perished in the fire.
Yeah, they were casualties in this house fire. Again, presumably Cari was sneaking around with a gas can and some T-shirts or whatever. I don't know. She was the one that people were thinking. At least that's the way.
She tied a bandana around her face and snuck in with the gas can and
dumping it everywhere.
matches. Yeah.
The whoever looked at the fire, I don't know if it was a fire marshal, whoever it was, would later say, "Oh, this was definitely an intentional fire." Now, of course, if they were looking at anybody else other than Cari, well, you're right. Yeah, definitely an intentional fire. But who said it? Of course, should have been a question to follow up with.
And when Liz and Dave would both tell the police, like, they could reiterate, Cari does this kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Like she's thrown bricks through windows and she keeps calling and she's done some destructive stuff before. This is the police are like, this is just an escalation, so we'll keep an eye out for Cari.
Right.
And they were looking, but again, at this point, the investigators, one state away, were looking at Cari as missing person, possibly dead. See if we can find her. But they weren't talking to each other.
And this was close to a year since anybody had heard from Cari. Anybody had seen her, heard her voice, get a phone call from her, anything like that.
Everything was text messages and emails.
Yeah, so after this fire...
Oh, but there were phone calls to Dave, from Cari's numbers, but he wouldn't pick up. And, dozens and dozens a day. Yeah. Just phone calls, random phone calls.
So after this, we see that Dave bought a 9mm Smith & Wesson.
Yep. He was afraid that Cari was going to come and hurt him or anybody he cared about.
Now, Amy Flora, we mentioned before, he was in a relationship with Amy and then it ended. They had 2 children together.
Yep. They had kids together.
So I think you mentioned that before, the children angle. She started receiving threatening messages. So again, ostensibly from Cari. The stalking continued. We see that Dave was with a woman one night and someone shook the front door handle of his apartment, and then a brick came through the window. I think you touched on that. So really pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
His work was vandalized.
Right.
Yeah, that was for Dave one of the last straws. Like he was like, I cannot handle this anymore, because when it came to his work, somebody had broken into his work and spray painted on the wall, "Dave beats women," which is a complete fabrication. But it was something that was trying to hit his reputation and at his work. He was just like, I can't handle this anymore.
And he said it was on a major road too. So just many cars could do this, could see this, that Dave beats women. And it was right before they were about to open up too. So he said that he was out there with another employee just scrubbing it, trying to get it off, so that his job wasn't affected. Because in his mind, like, if this is going to go on at my job, I'm going to lose my job. So if it's just me that's getting texts and calls and emails, all right, fine, whatever. I'm used to it now. But if it's affecting my job, like, we could potentially get fired for this. That's the last straw. I can't put my job on the line. I can't put my livelihood on the line. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet too is Dave would also, during all of this, try to meet other women through these dating apps and websites and stuff. But who he thought was Cari would go on there and create like fake profiles for him and message other people and kind of warning them like, oh, Dave's this, Dave's that. And so he found that he couldn't even try to date anyone because of Cari just bombarding everybody else and making his, kind of dragging him through the mud and making sure that he can't date anybody else, to try to put the block on that.
Which is something that brought him and Liz closer and closer, because, hey, at least she would still be there for him.
Right.
And she would be the sympathetic ear, because she knows all about Cari and all this nonsense, and she's there for him, and she knows that all of this stuff is fake that's going on, and she still cares about him. But he then also started talking to Amy Flora again. I mean, Amy had to be in his life because they shared kids, and he wanted to be around his kids, so he still had to have a relationship with her. And it's unclear about, to me, whether they were kind of rekindling a kind of a romantic relationship, or whether it was just because, hey, we need to talk because of this. But at a certain point, Shayna went to the police with this crazy story about how Amy Flora has been sending her these threatening texts.
She's the one doing this.
She's the one. Yeah, Amy Flora is the one doing all of these text messages. Somehow, Shayna
so before we get to that, I want to review something with the police, and we'll get to that part where she goes. So this, I think, is important. New detectives were assigned to the case.
Yeah, it had been made a cold case. It's almost 4 years at this point since Dave last saw Cari leaving his apartment and started getting all these texts.
Yep.
Cari's family hasn't seen her in 4 years. Dave and Shayna have been receiving these text messages, emails for 4 years.
Yeah, so they kind of, I can picture these detectives kind of sitting down and just kind of itemizing this whole thing. Like, what do we actually know, right? So Cari's sending these messages, ostensibly, but her checking account hasn't been touched the whole time. No one actually heard her voice the whole time. She was missing. There's no credible sightings. They didn't know why Cari was so interested in Golyar, the same thing I mentioned before. Like, she was really the odd person out here. Why would she be involved? Again, she tried to bring in other romantic interests to hide that, but the police were still like, no, she shouldn't be getting these messages. Yeah.
And what's interesting, at this point, these investigators actually went and talked to Cari's family. And that's when I found out, like, oh, there's been an investigation of what happened to Cari, and they got all of that further information, all the stuff we talked about from her family's side.
So they bring together at this point, they go to everybody who got messages, and they say, give us access to your computers, your electronic devices. And everyone cooperated. Because they didn't want these messages. They're like, here's my passcode, whatever. They added them up. There was between 25 and 50,000. So there's so many, they couldn't even narrow it down more than 25,000 messages. Like that's a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
Huge
Right.
number of messages. And one of the detectives, they made a deal. They're like, okay, you investigate the case as if Cari is still alive, and I'll investigate the case as if she's dead. And we'll come back together and see, compare notes and see which one, what we believe. And when they did, by the time they got through and got to this point, they were both like, Cari's dead.
The one guy said, I have no proof to show that she's alive. There's no thing I can point to that says maybe she's alive.
Yeah, so now one of the people that cooperated with this data download was Golyar. So the police had access to her phone.
Right.
She had a picture of Cari's Ford Explorer a month before Dave found it.
Right.
So this kind of, any suspicion that was on Dave, I don't think there was much, but it would have been gone now.
Right.
The
One of the interesting ones that we didn't even talk about during that 4 years was when Cari sent a message to Dave saying, "I've kidnapped Shayna,"
Oh, yeah.
right? And sent a picture of Shayna tied up in Shayna's trunk. Had duct tape over her mouth, and she's all tied up, and it's a picture of her unconscious in the trunk of her own car. And then Dave sends Shayna a message. Are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine.
I think he even asked, "Are you in the trunk of somebody's car
trunk of
right
someone's
now?"
car right now.
And she's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, pretty significant mistake. Well, Golyar makes a few of them. So Golyar had called Cari 6 times using *67,
Yeah.
which is something you don't really hear of too much.
Yeah, you don't
now.
see a lot of that today.
Yeah.
Old phone codes that could allow you to hide your number from somebody. Mm-hmm. Or *69 was if somebody called you, you could find out who just called you.
Right.
Which you don't have much reason and much need for it right nowadays because the number just pops up right on your phone. It's like, this is who's calling you right now. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a big deal when it came out, though.
Oh, caller ID was huge when it first came out. I remember before we had caller ID and you had to wonder who's calling my house right now.
Well, I remember with the old, say in the late 70s, early 80s with the phones, one thing that really stood out to me is when the phone rang, it was always someone you knew, right? Especially in the 70s. The phone rang, that meant someone wanted you for some personal reason.
Right.
An employer, a friend, family. Then, early 80s, we started seeing telemarketers sneak in there. And they really messed things up for everybody.
Always calling at dinner time.
Yeah, but the phone ringing for a long time had really special significance.
It was an exciting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like if somebody knocked on the door.
Right.
It was almost always someone who was there for you, not like a salesperson. Mm-hmm. But then they started increasing as well. Right. So the sales tactics started infringing on the phone and the neighborhoods and things changed. So now when the phone rings, it's like misery. It's like, oh, really? More spam? But back then it was a positive experience. It was a happy time.
More spam calls now than not, at least for me.
Yeah. All about your car's extended warranty, Jeff.
I love the things you see online about, you're on a deserted island or something. You find a message. I have a message in a bottle. This is great. Somebody's coming to save me. It's like,
We'd like to talk to you about your car's extended warranty.
You're like, no, the misery of I'm about to get off this island, and then now just the extended warranty.
It's just your extended warranty.
So
before, when we got to caller ID, the whole the calls coming from inside the house would have been really over. Prior to that, you had no idea who was calling. You pick up the phone, somebody's talking, or just heavy voice, and you're like, "What the hell is this? Oh my goodness!" And after we got caller ID, it'd be like, "Beep, beep. Oh, call's coming from inside the house. I should go." Who's calling me from upstairs?
end of the movie.
Why? And
No suspense.
no suspense at all. And nowadays with cell phones, it's like, whatever. But *67 was a way of hiding your number from caller IDs.
Right.
And which not a lot of people do anymore. I think it's still functional, but people don't just...
I think it'll work even on these phones.
I think so.
Yeah.
But 6 times she called Cari's phone using *67 in a very, very short period of time.
They also found a photo of a woman who'd been tied up. That same photo had been emailed to Dave Kroupa. They realized it had been taken with Golyar's phone. Right? They found a video of someone walking outside Kroupa's apartment, which had been uploaded using Cari's account, but the IP address was connected to Golyar's house. So they started to piece this together, and they kind of realized that Golyar was behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Liz had told him that she had no interaction with Cari. She'd seen her just for those few seconds in passing. But then you see this and called her. You have a picture of the car using her YouTube account. So it's like, okay, yeah, we see here that there's now some proof that you're lying, that you did have some interaction with her. You knew something more. At least you knew her phone number. And that's much more than just we passed each other.
And what else was interesting, what the police would find out from Cari's mother, was the several months after Cari moved to Kansas, she was getting messages from Cari saying, like, I've sold all the stuff in my apartment. The person who's getting it sent me a check, and here's a picture of the check. So let them into my apartment so they can get all the stuff out of there. And when police were like, do you still have that picture? And she's like, yeah, it's on my phone. Like, here it is. And it was made out to Shayna Golyar.
Mm-hmm. And signed by her, too.
And it was signed by her, too. And the thing was, like, the police had only interacted with her as Liz Golyar, but they knew her first name was Shayna. And so, like, they were like, well, we've got physical tie to Cari, another interaction with her here.
Yeah, so they took that mysterious unidentified fingerprint from the mint container, and they actually matched it to Golyar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if they had any doubt, it was now gone. So to make things worse, Dave calls the police and says, hey, that pistol that I bought? That's gone.
Yeah, that's missing. Like, we don't know where that is.
Yeah, so now everybody's kind of worried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody's a little worried there. And Liz then goes to the police and says, I think it's Amy Flora. I think it's Amy Flora that's doing all of that has been sending all these messages as Carver, as Cari Farver. We got to get rid of her. So you got to arrest her. And they're like, well, there's nothing we can do to arrest her. We don't have any proof. And then the next day, Shayna Liz having trouble with this idea that the police weren't going to arrest Amy, she went for a walk after dark to a big lake park. That's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And she walked down to the water's edge, to one of the piers, sat down on a bench, and then somebody walked up behind her and said something to her to the effect of, how do you like Dave now, or something like that, and then shot her in the thigh and then ran off. And then Liz she waited until, putting pressure on the wound, she waited until she felt she was safe, and then she, hobbled her way back towards her car until she could get cell service, and she called 911.
She had left her phone in the car.
Right.
Is my understanding, which is, obviously had this whole thing planned out, but still, like, that goes above and beyond, leaving your phone in the car, having to hobble back to get it after being shot, shooting yourself.
Right. And the funny thing is, on the 911 tape, she said, on the 911 call, they asked her, like, do you know did you see the person who shot you? She's like, no, I didn't see their face. And then later, when she's talking to, I think it's the next day or something, or a week later, she's still got the injury, and she's in with the police. She's talking to him, and she's like, it was Amy Flora who shot me. Like, I know it was Amy Flora. You got to arrest her. And they're like, one of the detectives just completely played dumb and was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, he knew everything. He was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. Let me introduce you to this other guy. He's a lot better than I am. So, like, this guy was just like, I will believe everything you tell me. I'm on your side. And he goes, I'll go get this other guy. He's gonna help us out. And the other detective came in and would sit there and listen, and we'd be like, okay, what's going on? And she's like, this, Amy Flora, she's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't, we got to have more proof than this. We have no idea what's going on. We've got to know, we have your word, but it's dark and you've been traumatized. So if only we had some better way of finding this out. And Liz is like, well, she sent me an email. And he's like, well, if you got any more emails with any additional information that would be useful for us. And so, you want me to stay in contact with her?
Right. They wanted her to.
And he's like, well, look, I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm not telling you.
Can't tell you what to do
stay
here.
in contact with her. But, if, the only way we're going to be able to do anything to arrest her is if we have some more information.
Yeah, they needed Amy Flora to confess.
Right.
And they were trying to get Golyar to find this confession.
And it's really funny. 2 days later, Liz comes back to the police and says, here's an email from Amy Flora.
She confessed.
She tells everything about what she did. She's like, yeah, I shot you the other night and I got rid of the gun and I threw it in the water in the lake and, this, that, and the other. And, of course I'm the one who did it. And it comes from an address associated with Amy Flora. And the cops are just like, oh. Woo!
Right, walking right into their trap. And of course, she's thinking like, "Oh, police are on my side. They're gonna go get Amy. I got to keep doing this so that they get all the suspicion off of me." Walked right into it.
And meanwhile, they've been telling Dave this the whole time. Like, hey, Dave, it's Liz. Like, she's the one doing all this stuff. And he's like, "No." Like, yeah, it is. And then by the time they get that, he's kind of like, "Oh crap!
Why didn't I see this?
Why didn't I see this before?" Yeah. And they're like, "All right, here's what we want you to do. We want you to move in with Amy Flora, like just temporarily, like make it look like you're living together again, like you're getting back together." And Liz, like the day after that happens, Liz calls them back and they're like, "I don't understand why Amy's not in jail right now. Like, what are you doing?" And she's bawling her eyes out. Just like, why isn't this enough? And they're like, "Oh, we were pretty sure she had something to do with Cari. If we had more information about what happened to Cari, we might be able to do something."
Yeah, they wanted the specific details.
Right.
And we see more mysterious emails that Golyar was saying were from Flora.
Yeah.
And she said the murder happened in Cari's car,
Yeah.
the vehicle.
She outlined exactly what happened.
Yeah, so
Amy Flora confessed via email to killing Cari in her car, like stabbing her in the chest and abdomen.
Yeah, so the police went back to the Ford Explorer, and this time they found Cari's blood.
Yeah. Now that they knew where to look, they pulled up some of the upholstery and things on the seat and on the side on the door paneling, and that's where they found the blood.
Now, Liz was a business owner. She owned a cleaning business, which I didn't hear that until after I heard about them searching the Explorer again and having to rip the seat apart to get to find the blood. And that made a lot more sense that Liz would potentially, I don't know if this, I assume this is actually that she cleaned it, but that would make sense that she has a background in cleaning and would know the best thing to do potentially to get blood off of something. But obviously didn't think, oh, there might be blood underneath the surface and I need to do something a little bit more.
It is amazing. Like, that's one of the reasons why they didn't find anything when they investigated that.
Right.
Twice prior to that, they went through only one fingerprint in the entire car, and that was on the mint container.
So apparently Liz was not taught that she needs to clean mint containers too.
No, apparently that's something you skip over that.
That's like
The
above and beyond cleaning
that's-
business. Okay.
Yeah. That's into what's called detailing, auto detailing. It's not just cleaning, it's auto detailing.
Right. You get the mint containers and everything.
Yeah, you got to get all the mint containers out of there.
Yeah, so we see that after all this, Golyar was arrested in 2016, and ultimately she would be convicted.
I think it was interesting, like when they first approached her and said, "Okay, Liz, we know you did this. Like, we know all of it." And she's like, "No, it wasn't me. I only met Cari the one time." She's like, "We know all of these messages came from your house." Like, I don't even have Wi-Fi at my house. Like, it's like, I don't have internet. Like, I don't have any of this. It's like, really? And it was so intricate, so out there. The forensic computer expert, who I envy for his ability to actually do that job. Envy him so much. He said that, like, this was a 40-hour-a-week job for her. Mm-hmm. Like, she was, concocting all of these emails and then using computer programs to send them later on.
Wait a minute. Scheduling apps?
Yeah, scheduling apps.
Another part of my business that was just stolen from me.
Right, it was stolen from me. Like, she had apps and programs on her computer, which would have made yours obsolete by then.
That's why I'm a counselor now.
Obsolete when we got the smartphones, even more so with the apps and the TV and the stuff. So she would sit there and set up emails to be sent to her and to Dave when they were together, and text messages and everything, so that they could be sitting there cuddling on the couch, and all of a sudden her phone buzzes with a text message And he's like, "Oh, it's from Cari, and here it is. Show it to him so that he can be like, well, she couldn't have sent it to herself. Like, if he had any kind of inclination to think, maybe Liz is doing this."
Yeah.
The first time that she got a text in his presence, that was out the window. And she was doing this so much of this that he said she had to have spent 40 hours a week, 25 to 50,000 emails, a significantly similar number of text messages, as well as all of the Facebook profiles, the dating profiles.
The research he had to do to find, because he had 30 to 40 lovers in the time from when Cari died to Golyar's arrest.
Right.
So he was busy. That's a lot of names to track down and a lot of people to intimidate.
I mean, in 4 years, that's one a month.
Yeah. It's that became her full-time job, another full-time job.
And she still had the cleaning business.
Now the computer investigator, I'm looking it up here, digital forensics and technology administrator, but Anthony Cava, the guy that figured this stuff out. I think he's really the superstar here. Now, Dave would say that in an interview that Cava worked at least one of his jobs, I guess, was at the school district where Dave's, at least one of Dave's kids went to school. So Dave was used to seeing him when he would need something for the kid's computer related to the school. But then he volunteered, from what Dave said, he volunteered his time at for the police doing work like this. And for this case in particular, I believe it was about 3,000 hours that he put into this, trying to figure all this stuff out. And which is incredible. I mean, for a volunteer, I think they said he got paid $1 a year. And that, he probably could have gotten a full-time job with them, but he just wanted to do this stuff. He wanted to help out, I guess. And so he did some really amazing work being able to find, in the metadata, being able to find out this came from Cari, this came from Liz's phone, IP address, all that kind of stuff. And another thing that really, really helped their case, maybe even made them be able to get a conviction for Liz, was the trial was within a few days. And so they're talking to Dave one last time just to make sure they got everything. Mm-hmm. And Cava, he's leaving. He turns around. He says, "Dave, you sure there's not anything else, maybe technology or this computer, anything that you might have missed?" And Dave was like, "No, that's I can't think of anything else." But at some point, he realized, wait a minute, there was a tablet. There's a tablet that I had. I haven't used it. All I used it for was games.
I think it was in his storage unit.
Yeah, it was in a box. It's in a box. I haven't used it for a while. Is that? You guys care about that? He's like, Cava says, no, I mean...
Did Liz ever use it? And he's like, yeah, probably.
And so, at that point, he was like, Cava was like, maybe, if you can find it, whatever, So Dave said, all right, I'll try to look for it. So Dave finds it. And so sure enough, it had an SD card. And Liz thought the SD card was in Liz's phone. And Dave didn't realize that, perhaps, or something. And Liz thought she deleted everything. But again, Cava was able to get this deleted stuff off of it.
She had deleted everything. She had deleted everything off of it. But
she thought she was in the clear.
Things don't, you don't actually delete anything. Like it all stays there. Just frees up, usable space. Mm-hmm. The metadata kind of sticks around there. And she'd cleared it. Like if you put it into any other machine and look to see if there was anything on it, it would show you nothing.
Right.
But Cava knew how to search underneath that, how to get under there. And Cava had to write his own code to try and coordinate all of the different stuff.
Made his own program. That's right.
Made his own program to search through all of these emails to find the similarities, to find the IP addresses and to collate them and the different emails, because there were dozens, if not hundreds, of different emails that were made up for Cari. And the first one was cari.farver@gmail.com. Super easy, but that wasn't Cari's email address. That was one that Liz made up. Mm-hmm. And it went way downhill from there, but he had to make that. But he found the metadata on that memory card.
And he found a picture on there
he found several pictures on there.
Lots of pictures, but one in particular
he found like thousands of pictures on there. But
a lot of selfies.
Took a lot of selfies.
Apparently,
Liz was huge on selfies.
Yeah, so he found the picture of a foot. human foot, but it obviously had entered into decomposition, but it had a tattoo on it, which they were able to match up with tattoo that Cari had.
This is the Chinese symbol for mother, which Cari loved to be a mom. Like, she loved her kid to death, and one, pardon my expression on that one, that's terrible. But she really loved her kid, and she loved being a mother, so she'd gotten that tattoo on the top of her foot. And there are actually pictures of her, of Cari, and where that tattoo is visible. And they found the picture they were able to reconstruct the picture from that thing of a decomposed human foot that had that particular tattoo on it. And they were like, this is her. And this is the proof we have that she's dead.
Yeah. There wasn't much question she was guilty, although she does still maintain her innocence.
She does.
Even now.
It's interesting. Her lawyer really pushed for a bench trial and pushed to get her seen very quickly because, in his words, they don't have a body, and it's harder to convict someone when there's no body.
And we don't want them to find one.
And we don't want them to find one while we're waiting for trial. So he was really pushing that speedy trial bit. And even afterwards, he would admit, yeah, I have to zealously represent my client, and at court I did that. But yeah, she did it. Like, he didn't say this in those exact words, but definitely more political way of saying it. Her defense attorney admitted that she did it.
Yeah, that's not great for appeal.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, usually, a bench trial, you only see that when the case is really complex and there's a concern that the jury won't understand it. But the judge is going to take as much time as he or she needs to go back in chambers and review everything. It could take weeks, and they will do it. So that's usually the reason for the bench trial. It's kind of unusual for attorneys to ask for that.
Yeah, he just wanted to get it, started as quickly as possible.
Yeah, for him it was speed. Yeah, because jeopardy would attach if there was a not guilty verdict.
Yeah.
So kind of looking back at this case, I think this is one of those things where it's just so unbelievable. Like, no one would ever expect someone to do this, right? So in that, right, in that activity of doing something so unusual, it's like Golyar was invisible. He's like, who would do that?
Right.
Like, no one would do what she did, yet she did it.
Right.
And that, if you look back, there's some incredible errors in logic that everyone made. That in hindsight, you're just like, how could this happen? So one that really stands out to me, Dave Kroupa changed his phone number apparently many, many, many times.
A lot of times.
And the messages were immediate after he gave the number to Liz. It never occurred to him once to change the number.
And not to Liz.
And, I'm thinking only give it to Liz. Right? Change the number and only give it to her. No one else in the world has it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Never occurred to him. He just gave it to her and gave it to everyone else.
Again, at that point, she's kind of a co-conspirator, like a co-victim with him. Like, she changed her number as well. Like, she would change her number, and then they'd be sitting together. She'd say, I just changed my number again today. Here it is. I haven't given it to anybody else. And then 20 minutes later, bing! Oh, crap, it's Cari. Like, she's got my number again. Like, somehow, and so that's where that logic falls apart. Is like, she's victimizing herself just as much as Dave to bring them closer.
That really fooled him. And the police, too. The police could have given him a number, like a special number that wasn't really his phone, but say, tell Liz, this is your phone number. Mm-hmm. That would have been the end of the case, because all the messages would have come in.
Right. Or he's like, well, we're not sure who it might be, but give this number to Liz,
right.
Give this one to Amy, give this one to, and give all these numbers, and we'll see who Cari starts going after, which number Cari goes after.
Yeah. They would have to have a person with all the phones in front of them to see what phone number rang. If only there was a job like that.
And then to text them back on a schedule.
If only.
If only. Oh. You could have availed your services to them.
I could have been like the premier person in this case, just sitting there ready to go. Attention to detail, right? That could have. Sure, there's an app for that now.
Yeah, probably.
Jeff could have been the one to say, "It's Liz."
That's like the climax of the movie, right? If this thing was a movie, just jumping up, cell phones flying everywhere because I just throw the table in this prevailing effort, and my hands are thrown up in the air, and it's Liz, and that's the way that everyone remembers the movie.
And then
Could've
Jeff
been
gets
it.
show running down the hall.
Right, slow motion.
Liz!
I got phones falling out of my pockets because I forgot they were there. Yeah, oh, it would have been great.
Smashing against the wall.
Right.
Yeah, so there was some clear mistakes, but it was really just because, again, no one would think in a million years that anyone would create a separate full-time job that pays nothing to create email accounts and, I guess, buy cell phones and get numbers. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, tremendous investment, time and money into this, and especially when you think about all the things she did to it, shooting herself, burning down her own place, killing animals.
Burning down her house and killing her dogs, cat, and snake.
Right.
Ow.
Yeah. And vandalizing her own stuff. Keying. There was keying of car. There's slashing tires. Probably many other things. And she, of course, had to pay for that, right? She had to go through all of the, whether insurance or just paying for it or whatever, but she had to deal with all of that, knowing that she committed all these acts. She was the one who did it.
Not to mention the time and effort it went into picking just the right bricks and stones to throw through those windows. I mean, that's something you got to take your time with. Like, you can't just pick up any brick and throw it through a window. It's got to be the right one, and she had to take the time to figure that out.
Got to be the right color, right consistency,
Right.
right weight. Oh yeah.
Yep, not too heavy, not too light. Correct penetration. Characteristics get through that window. Yeah, she really she overcommitted, and she got away with the murder. No question, she got away with it. She could have walked away and just not done anything, stopped sending messages. But then she starts kind of perverting her own plan by getting mad at Amy Flora and redirecting the suspicion away from Cari Farver. See, no one could prove Cari was alive or dead. That was to Liz's benefit.
Right. And if the Cari messages over the course of a year had trailed off into nothingness, I don't think anybody would have looked at Liz. No. Nobody would have looked at her. If it had started off real big and then gone away slowly over time, I think she and Dave could have, had a relationship and gone on. But it just kept going. I think it's like every time she and Dave were on the rocks, that's when Cari would pop back up again. Like she never really left. Like Cari never really left the peripheral, but like she would kind of start to die down a little bit, and then when Dave would do something, and they would break up, Cari escalates again.
Yeah.
And
So
again, that's another logic point, right? Where it's like, every time I break up with Liz, Cari goes crazy, crazier than she did before.
how could it not? Like, looking back, how could Dave Kroupa have missed this? It's almost as boggling as Golyar's behavior. Like,
He was paying more attention to trying to get laid.
his emphasis was definitely sexual contact with many partners. And I think he was just kind of, living his life just head first, not really thinking things through. And I guess not worried too much about Cari Farver and what she was going to do. Of course, he bought a firearm.
I mean, he became more concerned as things started to escalate. Yeah. But, even, 60 text messages a day, he was just like, whatever. Just change my number. No, it keeps coming back. Oh, well.
Yeah, so in psychology, there's a theory. It's quite old. It's been tested a few times in a few pretty famous papers. That basically is that if you go through a trauma with a potential romantic interest, like a frightening movie, like a I always say E.T. I always say E.T. was a horror movie. Like the whole thing with the rhesus and him coming up, oh, that was so scary. But, probably even more traditional, like one of the, what was the guy with the blades on his hands? Freddy Krueger? Yeah, something like that.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
That franchise.
The idea behind that, or Halloween, or any of those movies, was that one of the ideas is that you go with a romantic interest and you have that scary experience together, and that trauma bonds you. And the research actually shows that tends to be true, although it's not a dramatic effect. If it's a more serious trauma, then it's a more pronounced effect. I think that's what Golyar was touching on. She was bringing Cari. Cari was Freddy Krueger. He was in the dreams. Wasn't he? Was like in the dreams or something?
In the dreams.
Yeah, she was untouchable, this ghost warrior, and she kept introducing him to bring that trauma back. And it worked.
Yeah,
for a long time.
For a while. But like you said, Dave still had 30 to 40 partners in that time period. So like if they might have been together for a couple of weeks, and then Dave's like, oh, I got a date with somebody else. And then Cari just goes nuts again. And he was almost like, and I'm one of those people, I don't put any real stock in DID. Like I haven't seen much more than occasional case study on it, so I don't see much in the way of evidence of the existence of dissociative identity disorder. But this is one of those cases where that might almost make me believe, like that Liz created in her mind somewhere a Cari persona, and Cari was doing all of these things. That it was a different, almost a different identity. That Cari was doing all these things, and Liz didn't remember any of them.
Yeah.
I think she did, ultimately. I think she still knows that she did it, but...
Maybe you suspend reality a little bit, like maybe not so much a separate personality, but you start to believe in your mission. Like Cari really was evil. She would have done this if she survived.
Right.
So I'm just kind of fulfilling her evil fantasy or whatever. But yeah, she really, Golyar produced a Scooby-Doo level contrived plot. Right? It was incredible.
And the problem is, it was adults who were investigating it. If they'd gotten those kids and that dog, they'd have figured it out. They'd unmasked Cari. Cari's Old Man Rivers. Liz Golyar.
Scooby-Doo would have pulled that mask right off.
Right.
Give him a Scooby stack and case solved. It really was. It was a perfect case for the gang and the mystery machine there. It was not a case geared toward typical police work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To their credit, though, the officers did get the job done.
Yeah. This is one where some of the investigators fell down on the job.
The first ones.
The first set of investigators fell down. The second set, they were on point. They were really on point. They were really ready for that and put their all. And then, Kava was just, he was, like you said, he's a superstar.
Yeah.
Like he put in the hours, he put in the work, and he really managed to track all of this down and provide a really detailed report for the court to be able to see like how all of this was Liz Golyar.
Yeah, I think the other thing that surprises me about Golyar is her commitment. Like, so she murders one person. She didn't kill anyone else. The pets. She killed the pets. But no one else, no other people. And then as she kind of goes on, it's self-harm, like shooting herself. Now, was it with the 9mm that...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not...
And I think that was in the letter, the emails from Amy, where she said, I stole Dave's gun and I shot you with it.
Plausible because she had a relationship with... So she had access to the gun.
I don't think they ever found the gun, did they?
No, and the thing was, Amy said that she threw it in the lake,
right?
And then she got rid of it. It was gone forever. So and apparently Liz was pretty good at making things go away forever because no, other than the photographs that were brought back, nothing of Cari was ever found.
No, it was a case without a body. For certain. But, in terms of the 9mm, she was really taking a chance. That's not a cartridge to be toyed with. I think people think, 9mm is kind of the minimum self-defense round. It's a powerful cartridge. Mm-hmm. It's the one I think the FBI currently uses. A lot of law enforcement use it. Some of them use, the 40 caliber S&W and the 45 ACP.
40 Smith & Wesson or 10mm, which same round.
Law enforcement doesn't use 10mm too much. That's a really over-penetrating round.
40 Smith & Wesson and 10mm are almost identical.
10mm is a much more powerful cartridge. A 10mm is like that could kill a bear. Like 10mm is no joke of a weapon. A 40 caliber S&W, it's more powerful than 9mm, but it's not substantially different. I've never been impressed with the 40 caliber S&W. Now the 45 ACP, you know,
I love 45.
it's a very punchy round.
45 is a wonderful round to shoot. That's my favorite.
The other one I see getting more popular with law enforcement is the 357 SIG, right? So it's, you think 357 Magnum, you think revolver, but the SIG cartridge has, it's made so it goes in a semi-automatic pistol. So that one I see is more popular. But yeah, I say most law enforcement still uses 9mm. Like it's a lethal cartridge. So to put it up to your leg, a weapon like that, and pull the trigger, that's not like a 22. Not that would be safe, but a 22 has a lot less energy,
No, from what I've been able to read and I've seen in certain things, the safest place to shoot someone, if you're going to shoot someone or shoot yourself, is actually in the arm, because there are fewer major blood vessels in the arms. Shooting yourself in the leg, especially in the thigh, incredibly dangerous because there's a major artery and a major vein running in your thigh, and if you hit either one of those, you're going to bleed out. Like she got really lucky with that. That was kind of mainly just a flesh wound.
Yeah, she committed to the role. I mean,
she did.
It's unbelievable. And then, to do all that and get rid of that weapon. I mean, she was good at getting rid of evidence. Mm-hmm. Not the technological, not the digital evidence, as it turns out. But although she tried really hard to scrub those SD cards and all the memory of devices. But it was the text that eventually got her. I think there was a pretty good chance of getting her convicted without that. But now there's really no doubt.
Yeah, no, there's pretty much no doubt that she did it.
Yeah, and a no-body case to have no doubt. Yeah. Pretty good police work.
Significant.
Yeah. I'm often critical of the police, but in this case, the second round of detectives, I think, did a good job.
Yeah.
This is a case they easily could have said, bipolar. Carries up to bipolar again. We're not going to bother.
Yeah, but they didn't. And they brought some closure to, if you can call closure. I mean, there's really no such thing, but her family managed to, they know. Like, they know that Cari's not out there anymore.
And has not been really the whole time.
Yeah, and hasn't been the whole time. And now they know, kind of what happened.
And they felt good that Liz had been put away. Couldn't do that to anybody else. The interview right after the trial, the mom said, now she can't hurt anybody else. And that was, obviously that's not going to bring Cari back, but at least they got the trial, at least they got the conviction, and at least Liz won't be able to hurt anybody else because she'll be in prison.
Yeah. And that was 2017 when she was convicted, which I think brings us to, that makes one of the most recent cases that we've covered that has a resolution. I mean, we covered Matthew Coleman, but that's still an ongoing thing in our latest episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids.
Yeah, I guess technically Ronnie O'Neill would be the most.
O'Neill, yeah.
Because that was, his appeals aren't through, but
Yeah.
I don't think hers are either.
But we do have a conviction in that, so you're right, and that was this year, so.
Yeah, we got a good mixture of old and new.
Yeah. Maybe we can do one in the future, like just anticipating that something's going to happen.
We're going to anticipate. We're going to figure out somebody who's going to commit a crime. 10 years from now, we'll do an episode on that.
We just take different parts from different crimes, and it'll happen at some point, inevitably, I'm sure. And then we'll be like, see, we were right. We told you.
What? Minority Report. Mm-hmm. We'll precog.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We'll anticipate. We'll see that it's going to happen.
Which that movie is way more convoluted than the original Philip K. Dick story is. Way more.
Yeah, they squeezed a lot into that movie, but I liked the aesthetic of Minority Report, like the cinematography and all the different weapons that they made for that were not really copies of other things. I mean, it was an original movie. And I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. I know a lot of people say he can't act, but he's a good action hero.
He's really good at running.
Yeah, he runs everywhere.
Photogenic with running.
Every movie, very photogenic with running. I'll tell you, Edge of Tomorrow is another time thing. That was a great movie.
It really was. Another underrated movie, big budget, and it was funny, and the action was great.
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah, that thing with the helicopter. That scene with the helicopter. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler alert for Edge of Tomorrow. The ending wasn't as good. I feel like the movie was so good that I kind of knew the ending wasn't going to.
Yeah, I think it just the resolution wasn't going to be as good as the journey.
Yeah.
But that's one of those movies where the journey was just as good. And I'm sorry, Jeff, it was a sci-fi movie, so I know you...
I definitely didn't see it, but I did see Minority Report.
Yeah, seriously, Edge of Tomorrow is, in my opinion, like you should go out and watch that tonight. Like it's
a really good movie.
Yeah,
it's a really good movie.
Yeah,
I'll consider it.
It's really good. I think what I would have done differently to end that would have been to connect it to a sequel, which I think they're actually working on.
I think there is. Yeah.
So I would have built that right in because it was such a good film. But again, you probably had studio executives like, "Oh, this is a stinker.
Right.
Let's just cut our losses."
So Edge of Tomorrow, to give you an idea, it's kind of Groundhog Day with more of a let's go to war edge, right? Right?
Very upset groundhogs.
Like, yeah, very upset groundhogs. Although I can't say Punxsutawney Phil was kind of upset throughout that movie, especially when they went for the ride over the cliff in the quarry.
Yeah, he wasn't a happy groundhog.
He was not a happy groundhog. But it's that kind of time reset thing.
Gotcha.
It's really, actually, it's a really good movie.
It's incredibly smart.
Yeah, it really is.
And at first, you start seeing the setup and you're like, oh, I don't know. But then it really starts to work and you're like, this is great. Like, it's just, you're along for the ride. It's really terrific.
Yeah, it is.
So the Golyar case, very strange. I don't think I've ever seen another case like this one. And I don't know if I ever will see another one this complex with the impersonation aspect. And I think, too, the domination. Like, Golyar really, she not only murdered Cari Farver, she just dominated her image, her reputation for years after that.
Yeah.
Because people hated Cari. They didn't know who she was and they didn't really hate her because it was Golyar. But they thought they hated Cari. Like all these other love interests getting these messages. Like, this Cari is terrible. Golyar really just would not let her rest in peace.
Yeah.
It was just a terrible crime.
And even still, saying that she's innocent.
Yeah, still trying to victimize her.
Right.
Yeah, Cari's still out there, or maybe Amy Flora, whoever she's going to pick now.
Now she's going to say that Dave was the one doing it to himself or something ridiculous.
Dave was the one behind all of it. Yeah, that's the thing that is the most damning, I think, is the fact that as soon as she was arrested, everything stopped. Yeah. Every message from Cari.
Miles away, Cari's looking through binoculars. Oh, she's going in jail.
Oh,
all right,
the cuffs on her.
Gotta lay low.
Finally, whew, I can rest. 4 years of setting up a Liz. I can go now. Teach her to pass me in the hall. That's the end of the movie. That's the twist.
Cari's in the hallway still.
So in her mind, Cari just never left that hallway when she passed Liz.
Yep. Yeah.
And to an extent, I think that is true of Liz. Like, she never really left that hallway. Like, she walked past and saw Cari, and just that moment froze in her mind and just incensed her. And she went after Cari.
Yeah, well, I think that Cari embodied, for Golyar, like, taking out on Cari was like a substitute for Kroupa. Right, the rage at Kroupa, but she needed him alive because she wanted that relationship.
Right.
But she wanted to punish him, so she kills Cari and then weaponizes Cari's identity to haunt Kroupa for years.
See, there is another side of Liz that's interesting. Is she'd had a child when in 1999 she was with a guy. She had a 5-month-old child, and her boyfriend at the time, I think his name was Glenn Harris or something like that. He actually shook the baby to death, and then pleaded guilty to the manslaughter, shaking death of her baby. And after that, she moved away. She was living in Michigan at the time. She moved away and went to Omaha. And I think that it's possible that the loss of that child, definitely something went screwy. But I think if she had imprinted Dave as being like, finally, I can love again. I can love someone, and this person is the person I can love. I can spend, and just kind of connect it, and then sees someone who's going to take that from her again. She snapped.
Yeah, the relationship with Kroupa was really the key, and it's so peculiar because she wasn't what he wanted. I mean, he wasn't going to commit to any one woman, but she was trying to force it, not through finesse, Like she wasn't trying to maneuver in romantically. She was trying to force it with a brute force. Murder, impersonation, emails, text, throwing things, setting fires. It was just
Shooting
obsessive.
herself.
Yeah, shooting herself. Yeah, I mean, really, again, kind of full commitment to being that perfect victim. Well, together they're victims. That's what she was trying to sell.
Victims together.
Yeah. What a nightmare. So, a cautionary tale about dating apps. That's where it all started.
Be careful with those dating apps.
Oh, yeah, what a case. So,
If you really want to go on a date, you should really just hire someone to do scheduling for you for that. Just have somebody.
I'll make up business cards right now. Let's go.
Just have somebody. It's almost like a matchmaker thing, but they can schedule the emails and the text
I'm going to
messages.
advertise on Craigslist. That's what I'll do.
go.
I'll do it on the misconnections.
Misconnections.
Yeah, all right. I'm there.
Have you missed a connection?
Call
Do
me.
you want to find that special someone?
Want to
Call
schedule?
someone to schedule.
Will it schedule
your email.
anything?
all right. So, let's look at final thoughts in this case. So, go to you first, Jeff. Liz Golyar.
Well, I guess the power of jealousy, or the power of desire, or whatever it is that was going on with Liz. There was something really powerful there. And Mike, you brought up a good point there about, and I hadn't heard that she had that child that had been killed by the child's father. So certainly that could play a big role in it. But either way, the power of whatever Liz was feeling, going through, experiencing, that would lead to murder and cover up, and just wanting so much to be with Dave, but at the same time wanting so much for him to suffer, is just mind-blowing. And obviously Liz got caught, so I wonder if there were more people out there, maybe not to this extent, but a similar thing having to do with jealousy and trying to win somebody back, trying to spend time with somebody, trying to have some kind of relationship. How many more are there out there that we aren't aware of, that maybe even in a situation like somebody did something, but the police aren't paying too much attention to it because it's, they had a bad breakup and now they're mad at each other or whatever. So I wonder how many other cases, maybe not to this extent again, but how many other cases like this are out there that we may not be aware of. I'd be curious to know of anything similar, which I don't know of anything similar to this, but I'd be curious if there is anything out there that is similar to this.
Yeah, I'm not aware of one that has the intricacy
Yeah.
of this case. Like just, like back to the Scooby-Doo reference, it's almost like, Shaggy pulls the head off and then there's another one, like another mask, and then another one. It's like, who is the...
Right.
How many...
It's Cari. No, it's Amy. No, it's Liz. Ah!
No, it's Dave. I'm telling you. The next one's going to be, it's Dave doing it to himself.
It's Dave doing it himself. Oh, no. Oh, it's Liz underneath that.
Right, exactly.
One of a kind case. So what are your thoughts, Mike?
Just to clarify a couple of things, it was Glenn Herr was the name of her boyfriend at the time, who pleaded guilty to the shaking death. He was sentenced to 8.5 to 25 years in prison when he pled guilty to that. Her 5-month-old was named Cody. But for me, this case was, as I said, crazy. Just that was the word that came to mind, crazy, when I finally found all the details of this. And when I first heard about this case was an episode of 2020, and it was called A Tangled Web, which is actually the name of the book, written by what's her name? Rule. I think her last name.
Anne Rule.
Anne Rule. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She wrote the book on this case, and which is called A Tangled Web, and the 2020 episode was named the same thing. When the first time I saw that episode, I was kind of like binging 2020 while playing video games. So I was like, I'm playing a video game, and this episode comes on, and I hear like the opening stuff, and then it goes past the opening thing, and I hear like chance encounter in hallway. I'm like, oh, she did, and kept going, and and I was like, I don't know which one was dead, but I was like, okay, probably Cari, and then like Cari's sending these text messages like, nah, she's dead, like Like that was just my inner thing, just only half paying attention to it. And the more I heard, the more I was like, I'm right, but this is interesting. It's like I had to stop playing the video game to pay attention to the episode because it just became so engrossing. So, and Castle, and it's just one of the weirdest murders, just how it managed to go on 4 years. 4 years. The number 4, not just the FOR. Just this went on for years. No, for 4 years.
Yeah.
This went on. 4 years. She managed to do this. And when Kava said this was a full-time job, this is like 40 hours a week she was doing this, I was like, wow. Just blew my mind that someone put that much effort into it. And to an extent, what the defense attorney said, when he tried to point out, it's like, Dave Kroupa is a nice guy, but is he really that nice? Right?
Yeah.
Like that someone would kill someone and then spend 4 years impersonating them and stalking themselves and him and everyone else connected to him. It's a spider web of stuff. I was like, wow, this is just crazy. Like, this is one of those, like I said at the beginning, they could write a movie on this, make a 2-hour movie, but they would have to pull out a bunch of stuff and still include 100% accurate information. And people will be like, I don't believe it. This couldn't have happened. It did happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It appears to be a real case. It's pretty well documented. She's really in prison for a real murder. It's incredible.
Yeah. And she says she didn't do it. But it's funny. Cari stopped the minute she was arrested.
Every other case that we've done, not every other case, but most of the cases we've done have had some kind of doubt from people of like, maybe maybe this person did, maybe they didn't. There's evidence of either side, whatever. I'm not aware of anybody that's like, I don't think Liz did it.
No, I'm pretty sure in this case, this is one of those cases. Again, this is a 100% case for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm 100% convinced Liz did this. Like Jeff Pelly, I'm 100% convinced he didn't do it. Ronnie O'Neill, he did it. Like there's no question of that.
Yeah.
This isn't like Darlie or anyone else where it's just like, yeah, did it?
Yeah,
Maybe.
Nora Jackson.
Yeah, it's not Nora Jackson. It's not could this be? No, this is 100%. Liz did this. But this case is interesting not because of the question of whether or not she did it, but it's interesting because of the extensive stuff she did.
Yeah, her method, her strategy, it was unique. Yeah. So I find this interesting going back to Dave Kroupa. I think that was a point that some people get stuck on, like why him? Again, nice guy, but that's the extent of it, right? And he wasn't looking for a long-term relationship. So he wasn't really a good target if somebody wanted to get married or whatever she wanted. So, she's working hard to get this guy who couldn't even figure out it was her. I mean, it's, she should have really thought to the next level there and she would have figured out the puzzle, right?
Ultimately, though, it wasn't about Dave. It was about Liz. Like, yes, she became obsessed with him, but he just became the focus. But it was all about her.
Yeah, about her desire.
About her desire and her need to try and build that relationship, even though he was pushing her away. Her need to hold on to that. So it could have been anybody. It just happened to be Dave.
Yeah.
I think if she'd met somebody else on that dating app and similar events happened, we wouldn't be saying Dave Kroupa. We'd be saying,
right,
Marco Polo or whatever the name would be about that person. I think it was inevitably going to happen. I just think Dave, swiped right on the wrong picture.
There's something about him that struck her she didn't do this before. There was something about, I don't know, maybe it's because he had so many romantic options and she became jealous quickly. Like because he was, with so many people. I don't know, but it's strange that she selected him. It's strange that she selected Cari. She could have selected any other number of people that he was with.
Yeah.
But there was something about her that just rubbed Golyar the wrong way. It activated this homicidal rage, and she never killed anybody before, as far as I know.
As far as I know, she didn't. And as far as we know, she didn't kill anybody after that either.
I'd be curious if Dave ran an experiment other than the obvious one with the phones, which I can't believe he missed. I wonder if he had said, you know what, I really like you, Liz. Let's get married. I'm not going to see anyone else. And then see what happened. Not that would have been a good idea, but just I'm curious what would have happened. Would she have said, oh, I got what I want. Yeah. Now I'll stop. Or tapered out.
I don't think so. I think it might have started to taper off. But I think that any time they had an argument, or if they'd been out and about and Dave kind of like sidelong glanced at another woman, or just because of the instability of how this was going, if they happened to have a female cashier at the grocery store and Dave smiled while he was in line, Cari was going to rear up and go. Like, things might have started to taper down, but any little thing would have caused that to tick up.
So to speak to your point with dissociation, the feel of it, it was almost like Cari became the dark side of Liz. She activated Cari whenever she needed this demon from another world to encroach who could not be caught.
Yeah.
It's this kind of, again, this ghost figure that just, like the Ghost Rider, with the flames, Nicolas Cage, the Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider.
His head's on fire. It's hard to identify him,
It's a terrible movie.
It is, but in a way, I don't know why. I kind of liked Ghost Rider. I don't think it was a masterpiece, but I think it was worth watching.
It's like, I liked the character. I did not like the depiction in the movie. And the second one was just...
Yeah, we can't talk about it.
No.
Yeah.
That's another place where, like, Nicolas Cage is both like a great actor and a terrible actor. Like, same character, different movies. In the one, he's just pretty good. In another, absolutely terrible.
He's an inconsistent actor. Yeah.
I think that, like, I liked his portrayal. I just didn't like the way the movie was written around it. Like, a lot of the stuff in that movie just, like, I didn't feel like it was drawn from the comics for me. And then the sequel was just like a Ukrainian sub-picture. I don't know how they got Nicolas Cage involved in it, but
it reminded me of Die Hard 4.
It was terrible.
But the Ghost Rider 2 is like Die Hard 4. I don't know why. Just the desperation to go to a special location and get the stunts.
Die Hard 5.
Or Die Hard 5.
Die Hard 5, yeah.
Right, Die Hard 5.
Yes. Die Hard 4 was pretty good. Timothy Olyphant as the villain was actually really good.
Yeah. I like Bruce Willis too. It's a shame to see him with some of the Die Hards there. Well, I think mostly with the last one.
Nicolas Cage is kind of like the Nickelback of actors, where people love to hate him, and he always seems to come out with like a ton of movies all at once. Kind of like how the band Nickelback, just came out with a ton of songs at some point. And there's Andy Samberg of when he was on Saturday Night Live did a great impression of Nicolas Cage. It was a recurring thing on Weekend Update, and his line would always be he was talking to another actor. He'd come on, he's talking about this movie, and he's like, "All right, that movie." And Andy Samberg as Nicolas Cage would come back and say, "I got one question though. Why am I not in that movie?" And his goal was always to come out with 45 movies in the next 10 days or something like that. He's one of those actors people just love to hate.
Andy Samberg's great.
He's
great. Lonely Island.
And Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is hilarious. It's a shame that it's last season. But as far as Nicolas Cage, I don't know how we got over to Nicolas Cage, but there's some, Ghost Rider. I think he's gotten some movies are great, some movies are terrible. Like Con Air, amazing.
Mm-hmm. It was good in Con Air. There was another romantic comedy around Christmas where he lived a different life or something, and then remember that one? It was a Nicolas Cage, and something happened where he got to see what his life was like if he didn't marry a woman, and he was wealthy, and then spoiler alert, I don't know the name of the movie, so I can't really issue a spoiler, but it was actually pretty good acting. It wasn't the best screenplay. I can't remember the movie.
Right. And then you have other movies like Next, which the special effects were good.
It had potential.
Had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Another, we've talked about it before on this particular episode, another Philip K. Dick story made into a movie by Hollywood. But that movie failed on so many levels.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have.
It shouldn't have. It could have been really, really good. But, He's either really good or really bad. Some movies he's really good, some movies he's really bad. He's just inconsistent actor. But back to the point from Ghost Rider, it's just like for Liz, Carrie may have become that dark rider, that Ghost Rider where I need to be dark right now. I'm Liz. And it wasn't really like a complete, I don't think it was ever a complete dissociation. It wasn't a complete transformation, but to an extent, she uses that as a way of pushing off the feeling of guilt on herself. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that somewhere inside it's like, well, I didn't kill Carrie. Carrie's the darkness. Carrie killed Carrie.
Yeah, well, Carrie was an obstacle to get to Dave. Therefore, he was evil. Almost has kind of a fear of abandonment feel to it. Mm-hmm. So intense that there's this alternate persona, a person that she murdered, who she activates at will. And I'm sure blame Dave. Mm-hmm. Like, you're bringing the Ghost Rider back. It's your behavior.
Name a movie you were talking about, Dr. Grande, The Family Man?
Yes, The Family Man. Yeah. Not a bad movie. I thought, yeah.
It wasn't a bad
Came out in 2000. So 21 years ago.
Matchstick Men was a pretty good movie.
Matchstick Men.
He was a con artist trying to raise a daughter.
Yeah, I think I remember that one. I think most recently I saw him on a Netflix series with a lot of foul language. It was a series where they go through the origins of foul language. Yeah. And I feel like in that...
History of Swear Words, I think that was... I liked that show. That was really good.
It was good. And I feel like in that constricted environment, he did a really great job. Right? Like, I thought that really worked for him. And I was happy to see him working again. I know he had a bankruptcy or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He bought a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he had an actual Tyrannosaurus skull, I think, like some actual fossil of a Tyrannosaurus skull. Like, some weird purchases. I'm just supremely grateful they never actually made the Superman movie with him as Superman. That would have been just awful.
Yeah, he's no Christopher Reeve, or who's the one now? Like the current
Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
I like him as Superman. I think he's great.
He looks like you would think Superman would look.
Yeah.
Yeah, does a good job. Weird to see him and Ben Affleck in the same, like, as Batman. Like, it just good casting decision, bad casting decision, right?
I think we talked about this in our Back to the Future.
Bruce Wayne, he's good at Bruce Wayne, but not as Batman. Yeah.
The Batman Bruce Wayne that he's portraying there is actually more drawn from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, which is supposed to be an older, more grizzled, more cynical version of Batman in a different type of future, in a dystopian future. So I actually like the casting of Ben Affleck as him, which is really weird because Ben Affleck's early career I hated. Like, I hated him for a long time. It was like, he's the worst actor. He's only good in movies that are written for him. I said that for years, which was absolutely true. Like, you put movies like Jersey Girl, written by Kevin Smith. I actually really like that. I liked how he acted in that movie. But very shortly after that, he did Jiggly.
Oh, yeah.
Jiggly,
which you can't even bring up. Yeah.
That's one of the worst movies ever made. Ben Affleck, he can't do that. But so many other movies I didn't like from his early career. And then he took a break and came back with, like, Argo.
Right, he was good in
that. The Town. Like, when he started directing them and starring it, like, he has some chops. I mean, like, you can look at Paycheck, another Philip K. Dick story. Right. I mean, Hollywood goes to Philip K. Dick a lot. But Paycheck was pretty much just that for him and Uma Thurman. Just a paycheck. Terrible, terrible movie.
Yeah.
I didn't like his early career, but I like him now.
Yeah, I'm stuck with him. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know if he really turned the corner. But there are movies he was in where his acting is decent. I don't think he's a overall bad actor. There's something about him as a superhero though that I think just I can't get past it. Like, it just doesn't work.
I mean, at least he's not like Nicolas Cage, where you have Face Off, which is a great movie. Mm-hmm.
John Travolta,
and then you got Snake Eyes, which is just so awful. We have to just laugh at it, and you got Gone in 60 Seconds, and then Bringing Out the Dead, which just two totally different movies.
Yeah.
But coming off of him, to sum up, because we'll just go on for another
We want the
tangent.
best for them. I want the best for Nicolas Cage and Ben Affleck, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that Liz is where she belongs.
Yeah, she's in there for life. Plus, after she's dead, she's got to come back and serve another 18 to 20 for the arson.
Yeah.
So
She was convicted of the arson, too.
No rest in peace. Got to complete that sentence.
Yeah. Because they're not concurrent, they're consecutive.
I guess they really wanted to make sure she never got out. So that is the case of Liz Shanna Golyar, if that indeed is how it's pronounced. A case like none other. So I am curious to see what comments you would have for this case. Really incredible, again, unique, and I don't use that word often. We'll be interested to read those. If you have any ideas for other episodes, please put those in the comments as well, or any other thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Murder Part. We will be back soon with another episode. Talk to you soon.